All right, let's do it.
Cool, we're recording. Hello, everybody. We're Miscreant Theatre Collective. Today we're reading In the Next Room, or the Vibrator play, which is a 2009 play by Sarah Ruhl. It has just striking similarities to the movie High Tension, which is a part of the new French extremity horror film genre, in which the ending includes a chainsaw and a lot of blood. I'm sure you'll find a lot of similarities between this play and that movie.
I think I got the wrong script, you guys.
No, you got the right script. That's the crazy thing about this show.
The chainsaw is the vibrator.
Oh no! Oh God!
No,
Oh,
metaphorically.
It looks like Andy has joined us.
Not only have I. Hello, everyone.
Andy, how are you?
I am getting by. How are you all?
Functional.
Oh my God, I'm the same.
I'm stress crocheting. I'm doing it like now. I'm not doing it now.
That's the hand signal?
Stress crocheting sounds so productive, especially now that it's getting cold. There's so many hats.
Yeah, you're gonna make Erin a new hat.
It's true.
It's much better than stress binge eating and drinking.
Well, that was yesterday.
Yeah.
I mean, a new thing every day. It's fine.
A season for all things.
Yes.
Andy, just so you know, we're already recording, so anything you say will be on the record and can be and will be used against you in a court of Biden or Trump's world, depending upon what happens.
See, and I wasn't gonna make it political, and you went and did that.
Excuse me, it could be Joe Jorgensen's world.
Yeah.
Oh God!
Can it really?
It kind of is in a way.
For the cat.
It kind of is like the politics of "fuck you, got mine." All right, like we're kind of there. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I've never really listened to his podcast, but I hear a lot of people like him.
Yo Jorgensen?
I think it's a her.
Yes.
Seems like a nice girl.
Nobody likes my Joe Rogan jokes. All right, cool.
No, nobody does.
Got it.
I was distracted by the cat.
Yeah, and Annabelle does that to people.
Sorry, she's a loud mouth.
He's a cutie.
Oh.
Andy, who are you playing? Tom, do you want to change his name or Andy?
I can do it. I know how. I'm an adult. Some days.
Yeah, I was introing things, but nothing really matters until tomorrow ends and we see what happens.
And nothing will matter long after that.
True. We'll all return to the ether one day, and that will be lit. We'll all be one big body. We'll have shunted together, as in the end of the wonderful Brian Usna film Society. We'll just join together into one big conglomeration of skin and feelings. David, you're not feeling my... I'm sorry. Let me just say, I'm sorry, y'all. I appreciate everybody being here. I'm just going to be awful the whole time.
Hi, awful. I'm Andy.
Natalie, I got really confused when I looked over and your name said Leo Irving. I got really confused for a second. I was like, wait, that's a picture of Natalie, though, who's in the chat. I should just stop
me,
talking.
Leo Irving.
It's you.
Yes.
Quarantine's been
Says
crazy
it on my
for you.
ID. I'm sorry.
You can listen in if you want.
Yeah, I guess we can go through and name ourselves and who we are playing for this show, and we will read this terrific, wonderful show. Yeah, I'm gonna stop talking.
I'll start it off, and yeah. So I'm Thomas Gerlick. That's the name that I was given at birth, and it's also the name I'm going to give myself because I can't think of a better one or one that I'd rather be known by. And I'm going to be reading the stage directions.
Hey.
Go ahead, Harley.
I'm Harley Glenn, and I will be playing Sabrina Daldry.
Yay! I'm Veronica. There are plenty of things that I'm known by that aren't very pleasant, but I'm gonna be playing Catherine Givings.
Hi, I'm Andy Rodgers, and I'm going to be reading for Dr. Givings.
Does he have a first name in this?
I thought Doctor was his first name.
Doctor.
Dr. Givings.
Parents decided his profession well ahead of time.
Yep.
Anyways, hi there. My name is David, and I'll be playing Mr. Dick Daldry.
Yeah.
I'm Rav'n Moon. I'll be playing Elizabeth.
My name is Doron. I will be playing Amy.
As was previously discussed, I am Natalie, and I'll be playing Leo Irving.
Sweet. That's everyone. All right, so I'll go ahead and start. Act 1, first scene. Mrs. Givings turns on her electric lamp. She shows it to her baby.
Look, baby, it's light. No candle, no rusty tool to snuff it out, but light, pure light, straight from man's imagination into our living room. On, off, on, off, on.
She turns it off and on. Dr. Givings enters the living room. He walks through the space toward the operating theater without saying hello to his wife. She watches him after he exits.
Hello.
Dr. Givings re-enters the room from the operating theater.
Sorry. Hello, darling.
He exits again to his office. In the operating theater, Annie changes the sheets on the examining table.
Hello. We'll find a nice nurse for you, won't we? A nice wet nurse with lots of healthy milk. Your father put an advertisement in the paper, and we'll get lots of replies today. My milk is not filling you up, is it? Are you less fat today, darling? Are your cheeks less fat?
She is now in tears. She recovers.
I'll find you a nurse who hasn't a child of her own. Not that I hope to find a nurse with a dead baby, for that is tragic. Nothing is more tragic. Oh, it hurts me to think about it. You and your pram not moving. But I suppose if I am to find a childless nurse with milk to spare, her baby must be dead. And recently dead. Oh dear. I don't like to think of that.
Dr. Givings enters again.
I have a new patient who might ring the doorbell any second. If she arrives, would you please let Annie answer the door?
The doorbell rings.
Her nerves are terribly raw, and it might throw off the entire clinical balance for her to meet you and the baby.
The doorbell rings.
Please hide. Annie!
Mrs. Givings hides behind a piano. Dr. Givings runs out with the pram. Annie enters the room, or answers the door. She answers the door.
Hello, you must be Mr. and Mrs. Daldry. Please come in.
Mr. and Mrs. Daldry enter. Mrs. Daldry is fragile and ethereal. Her face is covered by a veil attached to a hat. She leans heavily on her husband's arm.
This way, let me show you to the operating theater.
Mrs. Daldry startles.
Well, let's just call it the next room for now, shall we? Don't be nervous, Mrs. Daldry. Shall I put your hat here?
Mrs. Daldry shakes her head.
Well, she's very sensitive to light.
Of course. Right this way.
Dr. Givings enters from the living room and overhears the last remark. Annie turns off the electric lamp. She leads them to the office.
So nice to meet you, Mrs. Daldry. Mr. Daldry. Shall I take your coat?
Mrs. Daldry shakes her head.
She's very sensitive to the cold.
I see. Well, Have a seat. Sensitive to light, sensitive to cold.
A baby's cry is heard.
Oh, is there a baby here? I didn't know there was a new baby. How wonderful for you.
Yes. Could you shut the door, please, Annie?
She does so. Then Annie sits invisibly in the corner, listening to the conversation. Dr. Givings sits and takes out his notepad, writing down notes. Mrs. Givings, meanwhile, in the next room, has heard the baby cry. She sneaks out and exits to the nursery.
What other symptoms is your wife suffering from?
I find her weeping at odd moments during the day, muttering about green curtains or some such nonsense.
Is it nonsense, Mrs. Daldry?
I suppose it is. The green curtains give me a terrible headache. The color. Old ghosts in the dark.
Mr. Daldry gives Dr. Givings a pointed look.
Tell me more about the curtains, will you?
The house where I grew up, my mother would wash the curtains every week. She beat them with a stick, and there were no ghosts in them. There was a beautiful view of a grape arbor, and when the curtains were cleaned, you could see right through to the grapes. You could almost watch them growing. They got so plump in the autumn. My mother would make loads of jam. My mother was not a nervous or excitable woman. It was just jam. It was laughing and long walks out of doors. We haven't a grape arbor here. I am full of discretions these days, Dr. Givings. But the point is, I haven't the strength to wash the curtains every week and beat the ghosts out of them. You think I'm talking like a mad woman, but if you could see the curtains, you would see that I really am very logical. They're horrible.
Mr. Daldry raises his eyebrow at Dr. Givings.
And you have tried the usual remedies, rest and relaxation.
I do nothing
Yes.
but rest, nothing but rest.
When I met Mrs. Daldry, she was 17. She was an extraordinary creature. She played the piano. We ate grape jam in the arbor, and there I told her I wanted to take care of her and protect her forever. Didn't I?
Yes.
Now I'm afraid there is very little sympathy between us.
Sorry. I am breaking his heart. He likes me to be a certain way. Perhaps if I could play the piano again, but my fingers will not work.
No, her fingers do not work. In the living room or in any other room, if you take my meaning, Dr. Given.
Mr. Daldry, please do not embarrass me with such vulgarities. I am shocked and disgusted, and I will leave the room now.
She leaves the room. She stands in the living room flustered. She sees the electric lamp and turns it on and off.
Mr. Daldry, your wife is suffering from hysteria. It is a very clear case. I recommend therapeutic electrical massage weekly, possibly daily, we shall see, sessions. We need to relieve the pressure of her nerves. You will soon have your blooming wife back. She will regain her color. Light and cold will no longer have the same effect on her. You will soon be eating grape jam and wondering how it is that Mrs. Daldry looks so much like a 17-year-old.
Well, thank you, Dr. Giving. You have no idea what a source of anguish my wife's illness has been to me. And to her, of course.
Of course. I will have her back to you in an hour's time.
Thank you, Doctor.
Meanwhile, Mrs. Givings has re-entered the living room with the baby.
This lamp is extraordinary. It hurts my eyes to watch it go on and off, but I enjoy the pain. It's a kind of religious ecstasy to feel half blind. Do you not think?
Yes, isn't it? I was not supposed to meet you, but I'm glad I have. I hope you find my husband to be a comfort. I know I do.
May I hold your baby?
Oh, yes, of course.
I would ask you to leave Mrs. Daldry here while you take a walk around the grounds. Perhaps it's better if you don't disturb her now, Mr. Daldry.
Of course. Whatever you think is best, Doctor.
What is this baby's name?
Letitia. Lottie for short. 3 syllables seem like too many for a baby.
Lottie.
During the proceeding, Dr. Giving shakes Mr. Daldry's hand. Mr. Daldry puts his hat on. Mr. Daldry gives a brief quizzical glance at the vibrator and exits.
The doctor is ready for you now.
Oh, no, must I go back in there? I would rather hold the baby.
Mr. Daldry enters the living room.
Be a good girl.
Mrs. Daldry hands the baby back to Mrs. Givings.
Oh, she's beautiful.
Funny though. Meow.
Mrs. Daldry hesitates, looking at the baby.
Doctor is waiting, Sabrina.
You'll be just
Fine. Like I was saying, you'll be just fine. My husband is a good doctor, or so I've been told. If you'll excuse me, it's time for her nap.
Mrs. Givings exits to the nursery. Annie leads Mrs. Daldry into the operating theater. Mr. Daldry surveys the living room and prepares to walk the grounds. In the operating theater.
Now then, Mrs. Daldry, I would ask you to remove your clothing, but you may keep your underthings on. Please remove your corset if you would. Annie will place a sheet over your lower regions. We will respect your modesty in every particular.
Mrs. Daldry nods.
I shall give you privacy.
He turns his back on them, a gentleman, as Mrs. Daldry undresses with Annie's help. Mrs. Givings has re-entered the living room without the baby. She sees Mr. Daldry.
Hello again.
Hello. They are trying to get rid of me. I am supposed to walk around the grounds.
Oh, but is it not raining, Mr.
Daldry. I don't know.
Your name?
No, if it's raining.
Oh, then you will have to gamble on whether or not to take an umbrella.
Indeed.
Meanwhile, in the operating theater, Mrs. Daldry disrobes with Annie's help. It takes a while to disrobe as she wears a variety of layers. In the living room with Mr. Daldry and Mrs. Givings.
There are 3 kinds of people. Those who use umbrellas when it is not raining, those who do not use umbrellas even when it is raining, and those who use umbrellas only and precisely while it rains. Which kind are you, Mr. Daldry?
I use an umbrella while it rains.
Oh, that's too bad. I find people who do not use umbrellas while it is raining horribly romantic. Striding through the rain with wet hair, looking at a drop of water on a branch.
Well, my wife is one of those.
Oh, yes, I could see that.
It's damned annoying. I always worry she'll catch cold.
But horribly romantic. My husband opens his umbrella at the merest hint of rain. And even if it does not rain, he will leave it open, stubborn as an ox, and keep walking. My husband is a scientist.
And what sort of person are you, Mrs. Givings?
Why, I don't know. My husband has always held the umbrella. Isn't that funny? I don't know at all what kind of person I am.
In the other room, Mrs. Daldry's clothes are now off to her underclothes. Annie drapes a sheet over her.
I'll show you the grounds, and we can use this very large umbrella, and perhaps I will hold it, and we shall see what kind of person I am. I only hope you do not get wet.
Sounds like a madcap adventure.
Mrs. Givings and Mr. Daldry exit in the operating theater.
Are you ready for me?
Yes, Dr. Givings.
Are you warm enough?
Mrs. Daldry nods.
Mrs. Daldry, we are going to produce in you what is called a paroxysm. The congestion in your womb is causing your hysterical symptoms, and if we can release some of that congestion and invite the juices downward, your health will be restored. Thanks to the dawn of electricity, yes, Thank you, Mr. Edison. I always tip my hat to Mr. Edison, a great American. I have a new instrument which I will use. It used to be that it would take me, it used to be that it would take me or it would take Annie, hours to produce a paroxysm in our patients, and it demanded quite a lot of skill and patience. It was very much like a child's game, trying to pat the head and rub the stomach at the same time. But thanks to this new electrical instrument, it shall be done in a matter of minutes.
I'm afraid I don't.
3 minutes, sometimes 5 at the outer limits. Are you ready, Mrs. Daldry?
He nods. He takes out a huge vibrator. He plugs it in. He turns it on.
I am frightened.
Don't be frightened.
There is no danger of being electrocuted?
None at all.
He puts his arm under the sheet and holds the vibrator to her private parts.
I will tell you an amusing story. Dr. Benjamin Franklin once decided to electrocute a bird for his turkey dinner on Christmas Eve, but by mistake, he held on to the chain, completing the circuit, and couldn't let go. He described violently convulsing until he was able, by sheer force of will, to let go of the chain. He was perfectly fine. Do you feel calmer?
A little.
This will take just a matter of minutes.
Mrs. Daldry moans quietly.
It's all right, Mrs. Daldry. That's just fine.
Mrs. Daldry moans quietly.
Annie will hold your hand.
Annie holds her hand.
Oh, God in his heaven!
She has a quiet paroxysm. Now remember that these are the days before digital pornography. There is no cliche of how women are supposed to orgasm, no idea in their heads of how they are supposed to sound when they climax. Mrs. Daldry's first orgasm could be very quiet, organic, awkward, primal, or very clinical, or embarrassingly natural. But whatever it is, it should not be cliche camp version of how we expect women to sound when they orgasm. It is to imply that she had some kind of release.
That was very good, Mrs. Daldry. Is not this new instrument wonderful? Thank goodness for Benjamin Franklin and his electrical key.
He waves the vibrator heavenward.
Did you know they electrocuted an elephant in Coney Island last week? Marvelous. Annie will help you get dressed and you may meet Mr. Daldry on the grounds.
All right. And perhaps I may hold your baby again before I leave.
Ah, I did not realize you had met the baby. I hope that was not distracting in the middle of our session.
No, I liked holding her. We have not been able
He weeps.
Oh, there.
to have children. I do not know what is wrong with me.
Oh dear, Mrs. Daldry, take heart. You see, Annie, it is in the pent-up emotion inside the womb that causes her hysterical symptoms. You can see it quite clearly. I will administer another round of therapy to the patient. Lie back down, Mrs. Daldry.
He plugs the vibrator in again.
No, please no. Do not touch me there again. It is very painful. No, please no.
He places the vibrator to her private parts.
Oh,
What are you feeling, Mrs. Daldry?
my feet are very hot, dancing on hot coals, and down there, cold and hot to the touch. My heart is racing.
He has a quiet paroxysm.
That's all right, Mrs. Daldry. There. You just lie there and stay quiet for a while. I'm going to wash my hands.
He moves to the wash basin. She sits up.
Can you please hand me my hat?
Of course. You don't need to be ashamed. This instrument has quite the same effect on all of our patients. Sometimes they laugh and weep all the same time. They often call for God.
Mrs. Daldry stands wearing her hat with her sheet wrapped around her. Her sheets fall off as she puts on her hat, and she is left only wearing her bloomers and her veil.
Oh dear.
It is quite all right, Mrs. Daldry.
Annie puts the sheet back on her.
I am suddenly drowsy.
Yes, most of our patients become drowsy after the treatment.
Might I lie down again?
Please do.
You are a midwife?
Yes.
And you assist Dr. Givings with births and all manner of things?
Yes.
How did you come to be a midwife?
I was 33 and unmarried, and hadn't the patience for teaching young children.
You have assisted women in their confinements?
Yes.
So you have seen every form of torture.
I have seen women in a great deal of pain, yes.
Hold my hand and I will fall asleep.
Of course.
Annie holds Mrs. Daldry's hand and strokes her hair. Mrs. Daldry falls asleep. Throughout the next bit, she drowses and then wakes and gets dressed with the help of Annie. In the other room, Mr. Daldry and Mrs. Givings return from their walk on the grounds. They are laughing and drenched. Mrs. Givings shakes out her umbrella.
I must be a very inconsistent person. I like to be wet, and then I like to be dry, and then I like to be wet again.
You are very healthy and robust. I could barely keep up with you.
I love to walk. I never had enough exercise as a child, so now I walk. No one can keep up with me, not even Dr. Givings. That is how he fell in love with me. He said he was determined to keep up with me. He only saw the back of my head before we married because I was always one step ahead. He said he had to marry me to see my face.
Dr. Givings enters.
Didn't you, darling?
Oh, what's that?
Have to marry me in order to see my face.
I see you've met my wife.
Indeed.
We had a very successful session. You should find Mrs. Daldry much relaxed.
Excellent.
I gave Mr. Daldry a tour of the grounds. We got wet.
I don't want you catching cold. The baby mustn't catch cold at this age.
Oh, you know I'm as healthy as an ox. If only more of my milk would come in. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Daldry. That is not polite to mention in mixed company.
Are you advertising for a nurse?
Indeed we are.
Our housekeeper recently lost her baby, and I believe she still has plentiful milk. Perhaps she could help you though we don't want to lose her services. She is very upstanding and all of the rest of it. Very hard to find. A gem, really. Self-educated, you see, with the manners of a lady. I don't know if she'd ever take it into her head to be a wet nurse. You know what they say about wet nurses. 9 parts devil and 1 part cow. But that's what you want, isn't it? A nice young woman who never intended to be a wet nurse, but who has milk, and milk to spare.
Oh, she sounds perfect. We desperately want someone very moral whose child is recently dead. Oh, no.
What she
no, what I
means
meant
to say is...
it's only that what they say, morality goes right through the milk. Mr. Evans said just the other day, I wouldn't use a darky. The morality goes right through the milk, but in the South, I don't know what they do in the South.
Elizabeth, our housekeeper, is colored, but she is very moral, very Christian. She goes to church every week with Mrs. Daldry, who is a very devout woman.
I see.
Has she recovered from the death of her child?
As I said, she's a very religious woman, resigned to the will of God, and her milk is still plentiful.
Darling, I don't know about...
My father was a well-known abolitionist, Mr. Daldry.
I believe I've heard of him. William Givings?
Yes. You'd rather have a Negro Protestant than an Irish Catholic, wouldn't you?
Mrs. Givings thinks about that.
Is she married?
Yes.
Well, that's good.
To be sure, you don't want an unmarried woman boarding at their house. Turn the household upside down. The pretty ones, anyways.
He laughs and jostles Dr. Givings. Mrs. Givings stares. Dr. Givings clears his throat.
That is to say, she's married to a fine man with a steady job.
We would be happy to take on your housekeeper, Elizabeth, as a wet nurse. And we can pay handsomely, but not so handsomely that she leaves your service. We really are in dire straits because my wife's milk is not adequate, I'm afraid. Bottle-fed babies don't do well in cholera season. They don't do well at all. It's no time to stand on prejudice, Catherine.
Husband is a very unconventional man. A scientist. I've no idea what the neighbors will say.
Let them observe that your baby is growing nice and fat.
Mrs. Daldry enters, looking wonderfully well-rested.
How well rested you look.
I feel wonderful. Your husband is a good doctor.
Yes, he is.
There are roses in your cheeks.
Is the light bothering you, Mrs. Daldry?
No, I hardly noticed it. I was horrified when the electric lamp was invented. I so prefer candlelight, and I thought, from now on, people's faces will look like monsters in the evening without the help of candlelight. No flicker, no glow. But none of you look like monsters at present. You all look very charming. You are wet, Mr. Daldry.
Oh, it is raining, Mrs. Daldry. Shall we?
Mrs. Daldry nods.
Might we
Might we-
borrow an
Yes, my dear. Might we borrow an umbrella? I did not anticipate the rain.
To be sure. I always keep an extra umbrella in case of emergencies.
Thank you, Dr. Givings. I will see you again soon, I hope.
Tomorrow, I believe, is best. We need daily sessions.
Excellent.
Lowered
um,
tone.
How much do I owe you, Doctor?
Not to worry. We'll settle up weekly.
Oh, fine. Then we shall see you tomorrow, and we'll bring Elizabeth with us.
Good day.
Good day.
Good day.
Good day.
The door shuts.
I'm nervous about bringing a stranger into the house. Very nervous indeed.
Lottie is losing weight, my dear.
Yes, of course. It's all my fault.
I'm not assigning blame, my darling.
Whose fault is it then?
No one's. The body is blameless. Milk is without intention.
A good mother has a fat child, and everyone knows it.
Then it will be a relief to find her a good nurse.
Indeed. I cannot wait to meet her.
Cheer up, my darling. We are happy and healthy, are we not?
Yes. Yes.
He kisses her on the cheek and exits. Mrs. Givings alone. Second scene. Dr. Givings examines Elizabeth in the operating theater.
It is important to examine you to be sure your milk is healthy.
Yes, sir.
I also need to be sure you haven't any venereal disease that could be passed through the milk to the child. If you could just lie back, please.
I'd rather not.
I'm a man of science, Elizabeth. Believe me, I won't be shocked.
Yes, sir. Sir, you won't touch there, will you?
Mrs. Givings enters the living room.
I'm going to give you a medical exam, that's all.
She lies back. He covers her with a sheet. The doorbell rings. Mrs. Givings answers it. Mrs. Daldry appears.
Hello.
Hello. I was walking the grounds. They're lovely.
Why, you look in the bloom of health.
I played the piano again.
What did you play?
I like to make songs up.
Would you play one for me? Oh, please. Oh, please.
I am very shy.
Oh, no one is shy around me, Mrs. Daldry. I have the most wonderful effect upon shy people. They hear me talk and they think, oh, why be shy?
I don't feel shy around you, Miss Givings.
I knew it. You see, I'm terrible at the piano. I just pick at it with one or two fingers. It's hardly been used. You must play it. The poor thing is languishing without a human touch. It's like a piece of dead wood without being played.
How can I say no?
Mrs. Daldry goes to the piano. She plays a pretty, somber, mysterious little tune in the next room.
Thank you, Elizabeth. You are very brave and you are very healthy. You can get dressed now.
Dr. Givings exits and Elizabeth gets dressed.
A bit sad, isn't it? Do you think we make sad things into songs in order to hold on to the sadness or to banish it? I think it is to banish the sadness. So then, if you write a happy song, is it not sadder than a sad song because by making it you have banished your own happiness into a song? What do you think?
I don't know.
Does it have words?
No.
Oh, but it must have words, Mrs. Daldry. Oh, it must. I will supply the words. Play it again, and I will sing some words with it. How is that?
All right.
Mrs. Daldry plays and Mrs. Givings sings.
You raise the blinds in the morning, and I like to close them at night. Together we sleep near the birdhouse and forget the electrical light.
Dr. Givings re-enters the operating theater and escorts the now dressed Elizabeth into the living room.
Well, that was very nice.
Did you like it? Did it go with your song? Oh, I hope you liked it. I hope the song liked the words because the words loved the song.
The song liked the words.
Dr. Givings enters with Elizabeth.
Mrs. Givings,
Hello, darling.
I have examined Elizabeth and she is very fit and healthy and will be a wonderful nurse to Letitia.
Oh, that's marvelous. I'm so sorry about your own child, Elizabeth. That's dreadful.
Thank you.
What was your child's name? Or did she have a name yet? Oh, that would be horrible. I don't know what's worse, frankly, a name or no name yet. Oh, I need to stop talking. When death comes up, I just ramble on and on. I'll stop now.
His name was Henry Douglas.
A boy.
Yes.
Have you buried him yet?
He's buried at the churchyard, All Souls. He was baptized before he died, and for that I'm grateful.
Oh, yes. Baptism, at least, is a comfort. He is in heaven now.
I don't like to talk about Henry Douglas, ma'am.
No, of course you wouldn't. Forgive me.
Elizabeth has 2 other boys. 2 lovely boys, very well behaved.
Oh, what a relief. We hope to have extra children just in case. That is to say, more children. I would love to have a great big brood all climbing over the furniture. Furniture is so dead. That is to say, so lifeless. I mean, so sad without children.
I don't have any children.
Oh, what a pity.
Mrs. Daldry is visibly agitated.
Elizabeth, would you like to meet the baby?
Yes, sir.
Catherine, please bring the baby in to Elizabeth. Mrs. Daldry, why don't you come with me?
Yes, doctor.
Mrs. Givings exits to the nursery. Elizabeth sits, nervous. She takes off her hat. Mrs. Daldry and Dr. Givings go to the operating theater.
Did that upset you to talk about children?
A little.
Are you feeling nervous?
My heart is pounding and I feel quite weak.
Well, you just lie down, and I will administer treatment.
Where is Annie today?
She should be arriving momentarily.
I do not wish to undress in front of you.
Yes, of course. I will make some notes. Call out when you are ready for me.
Dr. Givings sits at his desk. Mrs. Daldry starts to undress. In the living room, Mrs. Givings enters with the baby and gives her to Elizabeth.
Well, here she is.
Would you like me to feed her now, ma'am?
I suppose. She must be hungry.
Elizabeth sits, undoes her shirt, and begins nursing. Elizabeth cries with no sound. Mrs. Givings watches. Mrs. Givings is on the verge of tears. Elizabeth notices.
Perhaps it would be better if I fed her in the nursery?
Yes, I think so.
Excuse me.
Of course, just through there.
Elizabeth exits the nursery with the baby. Mrs. Givings puts her head in her hands. Dr. Givings enters the living room.
Excuse me, darling. What is it?
Well, Lottie took to Elizabeth right away. She latched right onto her breast, and it made me feel very strange to see her latched on to another woman's breast. I mean, for once, it wasn't the baby who was crying, but I feel very queer, I do.
Now, you have to think of the baby and what's best for the baby. She would starve without milk, so think about that and be practical.
I don't feel well.
I'm ready, Dr. Givings.
I have to attend to Mrs. Daldry. Why don't you have a nice lie down? Here, I'll shut off the lamp.
He does.
I don't want to lie down. I want to feed my own child.
But you can't, love. Your milk isn't adequate. I love you.
He exits. She paces around the living room. She tries to play the song Mrs. Daldry played on the piano. She picks the piano with her fingers. In the operating theater, Dr. Givings readies the vibrator.
Sorry for the delay.
Not at all.
He turns on the vibrator and it makes a loud sound. Mrs. Givings hears the sound, registers its oddness, and goes on playing the piano.
Fine weather we're having.
Mm,
Chilly but bright.
indeed.
There we are.
Dr. Givings puts the vibrator to Mrs. Daldry's private parts.
This will only take but a few minutes, Mrs. Daldry.
Oh,
There, there. What are you feeling, Mrs. Daldry?
it's not working. Today, it's not working.
Dr. Givings adjusts the machine, making it louder.
There?
I don't know.
He repositions the machine under the blankets.
Nothing. I feel nothing.
He turns it up again. The vibrating noise stops altogether and the lights go out.
Oh, dear.
Did I make it stop?
It's not your fault. Electrical failure.
Mrs. Givings looks up in the dark of the living room. She lights several candles. Annie enters the operating theater.
Well, I'm glad you're here, Annie. We've had a power failure.
My head.
Oh, dear Mrs. Daldry, are you ill?
I've been trying these last 3 minutes. It's never taken longer than 3 minutes with this machine.
Should I try the manual treatment, Dr. Givings?
Yes, why don't you? I will go look into this. Good day, Mrs. Daldry. Annie.
What is the manual treatment?
You just lie back.
In the near dark, Annie puts her hand under the sheet and begins to stimulate Mrs. Daldry. We certainly do not see this, and the actress needn't simulate it exactly, but under the sheets, Mrs. Daldry has a female ejaculation.
Oh, everything is quite wet. I don't know what's happened. I'm sorry. Oh, how embarrassing.
That happens from time to time, Mrs. Daldry. I'll change the sheets. Aristotle talked all about it.
Aristotle?
Yes,
Do you read Greek?
yes.
My goodness.
I'm going to wash my hands.
Of course.
Meanwhile, in the other room, Elizabeth enters. The living room is now lit with several candles.
All right. Sorry.
Oh, wait a moment. Elizabeth, when the milk comes in, can you feel any love for the child?
I try not to think of love. I try not to think of Henry Douglas.
Of course. Do you want more children, Elizabeth? That is a tactless question. You don't need to answer. Forgive me. Sometimes I say whatever is in my head. I want more children, and my husband desperately wants more children, but I am afraid of another birth. Aren't you? When I gave birth, I remember so clearly the moment her head was coming out of my body, I thought, why would any rational creature do this twice, knowing what I know now? And then she came out and clambered right onto my breast and tried to eat me. She was so hungry, so hungry. It terrified me, her hunger. And I thought, is that the first emotion? Hunger? And not hunger for food, but wanting to eat other people? I mean, specifically one's mother? And then I thought, isn't it strange? Isn't it strange about Jesus? I mean, that is to say, about Jesus being a man. For it is women who are eaten, who turn their bodies into food. I gave up my blood. There was so much blood. And I gave up my body, but I couldn't feed her, could not turn my body into food, and she was so hungry. I suppose that makes me an inferior kind of woman and a very inferior kind of Jesus.
Hmm.
Oh dear. They said you were very religious. That must have sounded...
I was very religious.
Oh. I'm sorry.
I thought of Jesus while I was giving birth, like you, but I wasn't thinking about why he was a man. I was thinking, please save me, Jesus. And he did. Now, why he didn't save my Henry, I don't know. So I stopped believing in him.
Oh.
The lights come back on. They are astonished.
Ah! The electricity is back.
Mrs. Daldry enters the living room dressed.
Hello.
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 You look refreshed.
Do I?
Oh, yes. Would you play us something on the piano? I am sure Elizabeth would love to hear you play.
I have to get back to my boys for supper.
Oh, stay just one song.
All right.
Mrs. Daldry plays a little tune. It is sad. They all listen to the song. Elizabeth cries, but no one sees her crying. Annie enters.
What a pretty
Oh
song.
God.
There we go. Sorry.
What a pretty song. Oh God, sorry. What a pretty song, Mrs. Daldry.
Thank you, Annie.
I must go.
And I.
I am walking in your direction.
Goodbye, then. Everyone gets a good walk except for me. Come again tomorrow, or I will be very dull.
Elizabeth lingers.
What is it, Elizabeth?
Do you pay me now or later?
Oh, goodness. I haven't any money. I'll have to ask my husband. Perhaps we can settle up weekly?
That's fine. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
They all exit. Mrs. Givings blows the candles out. Dr. Givings enters, pleased that the power is back on.
The power is back on. One day, whole cities will be electrified. Mr. Edison is the man to do it.
Don't talk to me about electricity. You know how it bores me. Everyone is gone, and we are all alone.
Indeed, we are.
I shall turn this off.
He kisses him.
Shall we go upstairs?
Or stay here.
In the living room?
I suppose it is for living in.
They move to the sofa, awkward. They kiss again, with polite desire. The doorbell rings. They look at each other as though to say, don't answer that. The doorbell rings again.
I'll get it.
Dr. Gibbings turns on the light. Mrs. Gibbings blinks. Dr. Gibbings enters the door.
Mrs. Daldry,
I forgot my hat.
you look flushed. Are you all right?
Perhaps the walkover excited me. I am not used to walking that much in one day. Annie and I were walking rather quickly and discussing, well, she knows Greek. Can you imagine? Oh, I feel faint.
Mrs. Daldry half collapses on the arm of the chair. Dr. Gibbings goes to her.
Oh,
There, Mrs. Daldry. Why don't you come see me in the operating theater? The electricity is back on.
Perhaps I'm intruding on your domestic life.
Not at all.
not at all.
This way, Mrs. Gibbings. Why don't you go to the nursery?
Yes, dear.
Dr. Gibbings and Mrs. Daldry go to the operating theater. Mrs. Gibbings listens at the door.
No need to undress all the way, as you're not feeling well. Just lie down gently. Are you still feeling faint?
A little.
She takes her gloves off.
Are you often subject to faintness?
No more than once a week, I dare say.
I see. We'll set you to rights, no worries. Are you ready?
She nods. He puts the vibrator down her bloomers. Mrs. Gibbings listens at the door.
Oh. No.
Mrs. Gibbings cocks her head.
Tell me what you're feeling.
I don't want a machine.
Any fluid, Mrs. Daldry?
No, nothing.
I will try a finger as well as the instrument to replicate Annie's experiment. Vulvular massage has been discounted in many circles, but occasionally with the proper diagnosis and method, it is just the thing.
He puts his hand under the sheets.
Oh.
There, Mrs. Daldry, let it all out.
No, Annie.
Excuse me?
Please leave me. I feel much relieved.
I will wash up and let you get sorted. Take your time.
Mrs. Gibbings knocks at the door of the operating theater.
Excuse me.
He opens the door and finds Mrs. Gibbings there.
What is it? The baby?
What is that sound? What were you doing?
Electrical therapy, my dear. Very successful session.
I wish to see it.
You would not understand. Leave me my dry, boring science, and I will give you the rest of the world. You said yourself that my electricity bored you.
I insist on seeing your machine now.
Are you going to force me to lock my laboratory?
I am your wife.
And happily you are my blooming young wife, without a hint of neuroses, and in no need of my inventions or experiments.
Experiment on me.
I can assure you, you would not like it.
Experiment on me.
It would be unseemly for a man of science to do experiments upon his wife. I'd lose my credibility. Now, would you have the good grace to be quiet while Mrs. Daldry is in the next room?
Mrs. Daldry enters the living room, looking the very picture of health.
Do not let me forget my hat again.
It is right there.
Ah. Thank you, Dr. Gibbings.
Mrs. Gibbings hands Mrs. Daldry her hat.
Not at all. Goodbye.
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 Mrs. Daldry exits.
I'm going to the club. Mr. Edison's man is electrocuting dogs this evening. He is out to prove the deadliness of the alternating current over and above the direct current. I think it's hogwash. In alternating current, the current flips back and forth, You see how much this bores you.
He locks the door of the operating theater and puts his key in his pocket.
Yes, it is very boring. Goodbye, and don't kiss me goodbye, please.
Very well.
He leaves. She storms. She goes to the operating theater. She jiggles the door. The living room doorbell rings. She answers the door.
I've forgotten my gloves. I'm so sorry. What you must think of me.
Oh, I'm so happy to see you. My husband has just gone to the club, and I am bored out of my mind.
I think my gloves are in the other room.
It is locked.
Oh, I can come back tomorrow for my
No.
gloves.
No, please stay. I have developed the most insatiable curiosity about my husband's operating theater. Perhaps you can tell me how it works.
Oh, no. I don't know how it works.
He plugs it in and he turns it on and then
He applies electrical current to my body to release the magnetic fluid. That is what he says. Because there's excess fluid in my womb causing my hysterical symptoms.
fluid.
Yes. Really, I must go now.
No, you sounded like this.
You were listening?
It was loud.
Oh dear. I will leave you now.
Stay for tea. Where does my husband place the electrical device?
Just here.
And does it give you a pleasurable or a painful sensation?
Pleasure and pain all at once. Electrical current runs through my entire body. I see light, patterns of light under my eyelids, and a kind of white hot coal on my feet, and I shudder violently as though struck by a terrible lightning. And then a darkness descends, and I want to sleep.
I have never heard of anything so strange.
Let's talk of other things. They electrocuted an elephant at Coney Island.
Yes, I heard.
It is getting dark.
I will turn the lamp on.
Please don't.
They sit in the dark.
Can you imagine a time when all will be electric? All will be plugged in? Why, it will not stop at lights, but the way we cook our eggs and the way we get our chickens to lay their eggs, too. Mr. Edison invented a recording device, which he says will change everything. It will record the last wishes of the dying. Can you imagine? A man may know the voice of his great-great-grandfather, may know his last wishes. And what will become of the human body? Electrical arms, perhaps? Even the fireflies will be electric.
Electrical fireflies.
Yes.
Electrical pianos.
God forbid.
Oh, to think of never carrying a candle. Not to walk through a hallway at night holding a candle, afraid of tripping in the dark, starting a fire. It makes one more solemn, do you not think? Or to blow out a candle, how beautiful, with one's own breath, to extinguish a light. Do you think our children's children will be less solemn? A flick of the finger, and all is lit. A flick of the finger, and all is dark. On, off, on, off. We should change our minds 12 times a second. On, off, on, off. We shall be like gods.
I'm afraid so.
Have you a hat pin?
Yes.
She hands Mrs. Givings a pin from her hat. Mrs. Givings goes to pick the lock of the operating theater.
I will just retrieve your gloves.
Mrs. Givings enters the operating theater. Mrs. Daldry is on her heels. Mrs. Givings looks around.
Is this it?
Yes.
How extraordinary. It looks like a farming tool. Where do you put it?
Here.
Mrs. Givings puts the vibrator to private parts over her skirt.
I see. Where's the switch?
I've no idea.
Mrs. Givings finds the switch. The vibrator turns on.
What a sound!
I will hold it in place for you.
She does, over Mrs. Givings' skirts.
Is it heavy?
Tolerably.
Well, I don't see what all the fuss is about.
Sometimes I close my eyes.
Mrs. Givings closes her eyes. Mrs. Daldry gently puts the vibrator under Mrs. Givings' skirt. the buzz of the vibrator for longer than is comfortable.
Oh. Oh. Oh.
Mrs. Giddings climaxes. As she does so, she weeps.
Well, that was very awful. It was a very dreadful, strange feeling. I see why he has been keeping it from me.
Yes.
Would you like a go?
Oh, no. Only the doctor can administer the treatment.
I don't see why. It looks quite simple in this day and age. All one has to know how to do is press a button or pull a switch. I'll hold it for you.
All right. Wait. Is that not your husband's carriage?
I can't hear a thing.
I hear horses' hoofs.
You're imagining things. He won't be home from the club until at least 7 o'clock.
Are you sure?
Oh, yes. When he starts talking about electricity, he cannot stop.
Well then.
Are you ready?
I think so.
Here we go.
Mrs. Giddings puts the vibrator to Mrs. Daldry's private parts. They look heavenward. The steady hum of the vibrator, transcendent music, a curtain falls. Act 2. The first scene. 2 weeks or so later, Dr. Giddings and Leo in the operating theater.
And then she left very abruptly, brittlely.
I see.
It was a terrible shock. I had been studying in Florence for the year. They're exacting masters over there. The line must be just so, the proportion just so. There's no freedom. You sharpen your pencil with a knife, as Leonardo sharpened his pencil. It was heaven. Not to have freedom. No freedom in art, but in life. Life. The peaches over there tasted like peaches. The rain like rain. I met the woman in question in Florence. A very beautiful woman. I know. No one ever said I fell in love with a woman in Italy, a very ugly woman. But she was beautiful. Perhaps not classically, but never mind. We met at the Uffizi. She was looking at the sculptures with no embarrassment. No embarrassment at all. I painted her face all summer. And she kissed with her whole body. Not like American women who only kiss with their lips.
Hmm.
You are perhaps shocked, Doctor. I know that I kissed her before marriage. I'm a devotee of nature, and I wish to avoid the fate of my boyhood friend. On his wedding night, he was repulsed by his wife's body. He said when she disrobed for the first time, he saw something monstrous. What? I asked. She had a lovely body, hair. She had body hair down there, he said, like a beast. You see, he had seen the female form only in marble statues. No hair. You're a scientist. That must amuse you.
What men do not observe because their intellect prevents them from seeing would fill many books.
Indeed.
What happened to your friend?
He's now a very famous art critic. His marriage went unconsummated for 3 years and then was annulled. I did not wish to see such a fate for myself, and so, while lips are willing and soft and free, I kissed them. Oh yes, I kissed them. She did not come from a good family, and her English was not very good, but I did not care. Her soul leapt out from her eyes. When I painted her, I felt like I could paint souls. Her soul hovered just here, and I could see it.
He gestures to a place about 2 inches from the eyes.
When I painted just 2 inches away from the eyes, and the eyes themselves, it was a revelation. I digress.
Mrs. Givings enters the other room and arranges tea things.
She journeyed with me to England to meet my parents, to announce the engagement. And then, the following morning, she fled back to Italy. No word, no letter, no answer to my inquiries, nothing. And my whole body revolted against me. Headaches, eyesight weakness, nausea.
And this weakness has persisted for what?
9 months.
In your extremities?
Yes. But the weakness in my eyes is perhaps the worst because of my inability to paint.
So you haven't painted for 9 months?
You can't paint in the dark.
It is very rare, a case of hysteria in a man, but of course, we do see it.
Is it treatable?
I believe it is. I'd like you to undress to your underthings and lie down on the table. Annie, my assistant, will be in shortly.
Annie enters the living room with the baby.
I did not know there would be a lady in attendance.
She is the soul of tact and reserve.
Leo undresses. Meanwhile, in the living room,
Was she a good eater?
An angel.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
I think that babies are angels when they drink only milk. But that first year, they could fly right back to where they came from, to the milk in the clouds. When they get teeth, it is the beginning of the end. They become animals, and there's no going back.
Yes.
But this one's still an angel, no teeth.
Elizabeth touches the baby's cheek. The baby smiles. Mrs. Gibbons is jealous.
Well, that will be all now, Elizabeth.
I'll just get my things.
Elizabeth exits the nursery. Leo is now undressed and Dr. Gibbons enters the operating theater. Annie drapes a sheet over Leo. Mrs. Gibbons alone with the baby in the living room.
No smile? You were smiling for Elizabeth.
Singing quietly to the baby.
You raise the blinds in the morning, and I like to close them at night. Together we sleep near the birdhouse and forget the electrical light.
In the operating theater.
This, Leo, is what I call the Chattanooga Vibrator. My own invention. It slips into the anal cavity.
Indeed.
Just face that direction and curl up a bit, hugging your knees into your chest. Annie will just operate the foot pedal, which controls the speed. It functions much like a sewing machine.
Ah.
Dr. Gibbons plugs the vibrator in.
We are going to stimulate the prostate gland. Are you ready?
I think so.
He puts the vibrator down Leo's underthings. Annie assists. Leo is troubled. Leo is shocked. Leo has an anal paroxysm.
Oh. Oh. Oh.
Mrs. Gibbons goes to the door. A man's voice?
Excellent. I think we can stop now for the day. How are you feeling? Would you like a cup of tea?
I would love a cup of tea.
Dr. Gibbons enters the living room.
Hello, darling. How is work?
A new patient. An interesting case. Very rare.
A man.
How did you know?
I heard a man's voice.
I did not know the door was quite so porous.
But why would a man come to see you?
Hysteria is very rare in a man, but then again, he is an artist. Perhaps you should take the baby for a walk so that you don't chance running into him.
I believe the baby is still hungry. I'll just go and find Elizabeth.
Yes.
She exits with the baby. Dr. Gibbings pours tea. Meanwhile, Leo has gotten dressed with Annie's assistance.
Thank you.
Looking at the vibrator.
How odd.
Dr. Gibbings enters and hands Leo tea.
Lovely.
I'll see you tomorrow. I believe daily sessions will be best at this early stage. Feel free to use the grounds.
Excellent. Thank you, Doctor.
Leo hesitates, befuddled.
Of course. See you tomorrow then.
Yes. Yes, of course.
Leo enters the living room at the exact moment that Dr. Gibbings enters without the baby. Mrs. Gibbings enters without the baby.
Hello,
Hello.
Mrs. Gibbings.
You are the doctor's wife.
I am. He seldom has men here. What a rare treat to make your acquaintance.
She looks at him, puzzled, remembering her own experience with the vibrator and wondering how on earth it is used on men.
Leonard Irving.
Well, pleased to meet you, Mr. Irving.
And you?
He kisses her hand.
So old-fashioned.
I'm afraid everyone goes around these days saying, I am a modern man. I am a modern woman. It's the modern age, after all, but I detest modernity.
Do you? How contrary. Are you a very contrary person?
Some might say so.
The cut of your coat is very old-fashioned.
It's my father's coat. I can't be bothered with the cut of the coat. I throw on whatever my father leaves for rags.
Leo looks at the lamp and squints.
Is the lamp too much for your eyes?
The light has troubled me greatly for the past 9 months, but I feel better presently.
She shuts the lamp off.
Just in case.
When Edison's light came out, they were all saying, my God, light like the sunset of an Italian autumn. No smoke, no odor, a light without flame, without danger. But to me, Mrs. Gibbings, a light without flame isn't divine. A light without flame is like...
What?
I cannot say.
Why not?
I hardly know you. I would offend your feminine sensibilities.
Oh, no need to be shy around me. I just blurt anything out.
Well, then, light without flame is like having relations with a prostitute. No flame of love or desire, only the trappings of the act. And without love, without the mental quickening, the eyes, the blood, without the heart or intellect, the bodies are meat and bone and levers and technicalities.
Well, perhaps you were right. Perhaps you not to have said.
Not that I have ever known any prostitutes intimately.
Well, I wasn't implying.
It's only a metaphor.
It is awkward. They sit there in the gathering darkness.
I love this time of afternoon when the world is becoming dark and you can see outside your window. Lights in the neighboring windows coming on, one yellow, one almost white. Little squares of light, other people's lives, sheltered against the night, so hopeful. Ridiculous, isn't it, to have so much hope? To think a little square of light could blot out the darkness, and yet another comes on, and see.
He brings her into the window. answered.
Look, there, another window lit. Golden. The rest of the house dark, and an incomplete painting. I love incomplete paintings. Why do painters always insist upon finishing paintings? It's unaccountable. Life is not like that.
Oh,
And the ones Michelangelo never finished. Do you know them? Ghosts of lines hovering in the background. Have you ever seen Virgin and Child with the Angels?
I have never been to Italy.
You must go. And upon arrival, you must go directly to see that painting. The incomplete lines of God. They cannot be filled in because they would be too beautiful. They would shock the senses. And they are almost there. Women or angels exchanging confidences, coming into being. A woman who is 2/3 done is nearer to God. A young woman on the verge of knowing herself is the most attractive thing on this earth to a man for this very reason.
Do you think so?
Oh, yes.
They sit for a moment in the dark. The doorbell rings.
Excuse me.
Mrs. Givings jumps and answers the door. It is Mrs. Daldry.
Mrs. Daldry!
Hello. Am I early? I think that I am early.
I have just made the acquaintance of Mr. Irving.
Pleased to meet you. But you are in the dark.
Mrs. Givings switches on the lamp. Leo is riveted by Mrs. Daldry's fragile beauty in the light.
I must go. 1,000 paintings. That is to say, 1,000 apologies, as it were, for my rudeness in leaving so suddenly. I now have 1,000 paintings to make. A bolt from the blue. I must order a new canvas. Several. Immediately. Goodbye.
He runs out the door.
What an interesting young man.
Yes,
A painter.
indeed.
Mrs. Givings makes sure they are alone.
Mrs. Daldry, I've been wanting to speak to you ever since our adventure with the hat pin. You told me you saw light when my husband treats you, and then you got drowsy and wanted to sleep. Well, I had such a different sensation. I wonder if it can be the same instrument at all. I was not the least bit drowsy afterward. In fact, I was overcome with a desire to walk or run or climb a tree. How could one device cause such opposite reactions? Perhaps it is because I am well and you are ill.
I do not know. I've been so worried that your husband might find out and get upset with us and suspend the treatment.
I do not care. I am determined to use the device again and unlock the mystery as to why it makes you drowsy and me very excitable. Why, I feel like a scientist.
Dr. Givings enters.
Ah, Mrs. Daldry and Mrs. Givings, we are ready for you in the next room.
Yes.
Dr. Givings shoots a look at Mrs. Givings for speaking with his patients. He guides Mrs. Daldry to the operating theater.
Right this way. Looking well, looking well. Your appetite has improved, no?
I dare say it has.
Wonderful.
They go to the operating theater. Mrs. Givings watches them go. The doorbell rings. Mrs. Givings answers it. No.
Ah, Mr. Irving. I am very glad you returned, Mr. Irving. I am all by myself as Mrs. Daldry has gone in to get electrical therapy, and I, the wife, am left to my own devices, as it were.
I'm not sure what you mean, Mrs. Givings.
Have some more tea.
I don't
She
want to
pours.
impose.
You'll have to wait for them to finish before you can retrieve your scarf. Sit! Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is for women and small fat boys.
Oh.
Lovely.
In the operating theater, Dr. Givings plugs in the vibrator while Mrs. Daldry gets undressed. The sound of the vibrator, Leo and Mrs. Givings talk over it.
It's fine weather we're having for November.
Yes, though dark.
Yes, it is dark.
Mrs. Daldry moans from the other room. Leo speaks more loudly.
Dark so early. Dark and the trees so tall and naked. I think November is the tallest month because when the trees have not their leaves, they look so much taller. Tall in a lonely way.
Mrs. Daldry moans.
Yes, and November is a tall month. October is a round month. April is a skinny month.
No, do stop talking of the seasons.
Excuse me?
Well, we talk, and we surround ourselves with plants, with teapots, with little statuettes to give ourselves a feeling of home or permanency, as if with enough heavy objects, perhaps the world won't shatter into a million pieces. Perhaps the house will not fly away, but I experienced something the other day, Mr. Irving, something to shatter a statuette, to shatter an elephant. Here is my riddle. What is a thing that can put a man to death and also bring him back to life again? Will you answer?
That is easy.
Is it?
Love.
No, electricity.
Meanwhile, Mrs. Daldry has a loud paroxysm in the next room.
Very good, Mrs. Daldry.
Leo and Mrs. Givings look at each other. Elizabeth enters with her coat.
She ate again, and she's sleeping. I never had a girl. When she eats so quietly, so politely, not like my boys who were ravenous.
I thank you, Elizabeth.
You are the baby's nurse.
Oh, excuse me. I did not see you. I would not have spoken of. Yes, I am the baby's nurse.
I should like to paint you nursing the baby.
Sorry.
That would not be.
A Madonna for our times, a Madonna after the Civil War.
Sir.
Oh dear, have I displeased you?
You'll have to excuse us, Elizabeth. The men in my household are very unorthodox. Artists and scientists don't care at all about convention, do they?
Since your husband's been treating me, I feel full of the most wild creative energies. I could paint all night and everyone seems so full of beauty. You, Elizabeth, are beautiful and you ought to be in a painting.
I've never had a man in the room when I've nursed a baby. My husband, of course, has seen me nurse my own, but that is different.
I would pay you handsomely. And during your regular work hours, just triple the salary and pretend I'm not there while you work.
Triple the salary?
Yes. I cannot imagine she pays you very much for your services.
Mr. Irving, really?
I will pay you $10 an hour for your services.
Elizabeth and Mrs. Givings look at each other shocked. $10 was the equivalent of $175 or so.
I will sit for you, but do not tell my husband, and please disguise my features, and so that nothing would seem improper. I would like Miss Givings to sit in the room with us.
You must have a beautiful dress to wear, or a robe. Have you a dressing gown we could borrow? It must be something that will allow the breast out, so that she may give suck.
Mrs. Givings is shocked. Mrs. Daldry and Dr. Givings enter.
Hello, Leo. I do not like that my patients should be scheduled so that they meet up. I'm so sorry.
I left my scarf.
Go right ahead and get it. We are finished.
Hello.
Hello.
The doorbell rings. It is Mr. Daldry.
Hello, Mr. Daldry.
I will just fetch my scarf.
In the other room, Leo looks at the vibrating machine. He wonders how it might be used on a woman.
You're looking well, Mrs. Daldry. You look well this morning, but you have even more color in your cheeks now.
Isn't the improvement amazing?
Indeed. I think she might be ready to stop treatments.
I think that would be premature.
I think that would be premature. You took the words out of my mouth, doctor. I am not cured yet.
But much improved.
Yes.
You are a magician, doctor.
Leo enters the living room.
I'd forgotten my scarf.
Leo Irving.
Dick Daldry.
Pleased to meet you.
I am glad you found your scarf. It's snowing.
Oh, is it?
In November?
Indeed. I brought your Macintosh, my dear.
Thank you.
Thank you, doctor.
Not at all.
I will follow you out. We can all walk together.
Mrs. Daldry, Mr. Daldry, Elizabeth, and Leo leave.
Goodbye.
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 Hi.
Dr. Givings shuts the door. Mrs. Givings looks disquieted.
What is it?
I think we ought to let Elizabeth go.
Whatever for? Letitia is blooming and rosy and positively fat.
I think Elizabeth is becoming too attached to the baby.
You want her to give love to the baby, but not too much love.
Precisely.
I shall never understand women.
I am still leaking bits of gray milk. It is as though my body is crying.
Oh, darling. You'll be back to normal in no time. And it's good for you to give up nursing. We could have another child more quickly.
Another child? I can hardly... She won't even look at me.
Who?
The baby! She won't smile at me. I am not a good mother. I do nothing. I pour the tea. I wish you to use your machine on me.
Darling, it's for women who are ill. It would probably have no effect on you at all. You're perfectly healthy.
I am not healthy. I feel restless and excitable, and I cry at the smallest thing. You help countless other women, but me, your wife, you just pat on the head.
What is the matter?
She knows where to get comfort and love, and it is not from me.
You are her mother.
In name only. Milk is comfort. Milk is love. How will she learn to love me?
You do seem to be suffering, perhaps from the excess fluid of milk. I can perhaps try the treatment on you, although it makes me nervous. But don't go around telling your friends. It must not get out into the scientific community that I am treating my own wife.
Now?
I haven't any other patients for an hour.
Well, now that you've given way, I feel quite frightened.
There's nothing to be frightened of, darling. Come along, I'll show you.
He leads her to the operating theater.
First, you undress your underthings. I shall turn around.
Do all the women undress their underthings?
It's medicine, my love.
She starts to undress and realizes there are too many buttons in the back.
I can't do this bit without your help.
Oh, sorry.
He helps her with the buttons, then turns around again, a gentleman.
Is that all right?
Yes.
She finishes undressing herself. He plugs in the vibrator.
Don't be alarmed. Just lie down and relax.
He does.
Are you quite comfortable?
Yes.
He holds the vibrator to her private parts, his face impassive.
Electricity is not to be feared. It is harnessed from nature. I remember when I was a child, I was stroking the cat's back one day and was startled to see sparks rising up out of her fur. My father said, "This is nothing but electricity, the same thing you see on the trees in a storm." My mother seemed alarmed. "Stop stroking the cat. You might start a fire." I kept on stroking the cat. I thought, is nature a cat? If so, who strokes its back? God?
And what did you determine?
Natural law. Is that too much pressure?
No. Oh. Oh, kiss me, darling, kiss me.
Afterwards.
No, kiss me now, kiss me, and hold the instrument. They're just there at the same time.
Darling, no, that would be...
I don't care, do it. I have been longing to kiss someone like this.
She kisses him passionately, puts the vibrator back on her private parts.
This is what I feared. In a sick woman, the device restores balance, but in a healthy woman, it makes you excitable and perhaps even causes some perverse kind of onanism.
What is onanism?
I am relieved that you do not know. I'm afraid the experiment was not a success, dear.
And I say it was a success. Kiss me now.
He kisses her politely.
This is inadequate. You are inadequate, oh God!
She has not yet had a paroxysm. He takes the vibrator away from her.
I made a terrible mistake bringing you into the operating theater. Men of science should never mix their family lives and their medical lives. It was a mistake, my darling, and we will both forget about it.
He unplugs the vibrator.
Now, I want you to go upstairs and take a nap.
No!
Catherine.
She dresses, and Dr. Giddings helps her with the innumerable buttons.
I shall take a walk. Will you help me on with this? For God's sakes, why does it have to have so many buttons?
There are quite a lot of buttons.
I could walk all night in the snow.
Is it snowing out?
Oh, you didn't notice the first snow? My God! When I first met you and was nothing more than a girl, I wrote my name in the snow outside your window. I would have done anything for you to notice me. You were older and seemed so wise, so calm, and so marvelously indifferent to me. I don't know if you ever saw... It melted. No matter. If you saw my name in the snow, all you'll see was a natural substance.
Catherine!
I'm afraid you've done up the buttons all wrong.
Sorry.
He starts doing the buttons over again.
It was an unnecessary gesture, childish. A name in the snow, but a gift must be unnecessary for it to be good. But you want it to be useful. You wouldn't say, well, it's useless, but you made it for me alone. And so it will never melt. It will exist for all time. Oh, how ridiculous I sound. My hat, please.
She is dressed.
I made a very bad mistake today, and I am sorry.
He tries to touch her.
Goodbye.
She leaves the operating theater. She leaves the house without her coat, hat, or mittens.
Take your wrap. It's cold. Did you really write your name in the snow?
Dr. Giddings alone. He washes up, resigned. He splashes his face with water. He looks at the water and becomes entranced, fascinated, inspired.
Annie.
Annie appears.
Can you take this down? I have suddenly thought up a new invention.
She takes notes.
A vibrator made of water. The healing power of water, married to a great electrical force, could be, my goodness, revolutionary. The patient would experience a calming effect from the water, even as she has a release from the pressure, revitalizing the circulation. It could be used on patients who are prone to excitability, like my wife. That is to say, we will need 20 feet of copper piping right away. Can you order it from the hardware store as soon as possible?
Yes, sir.
Annie exits. Dr. Givings tries to work with his hands in the air, how his invention would work. Mrs. Givings re-enters the living room with Leo. They are laughing, and their faces are flushed.
How glad I am that I found you.
And you. You might have caught a terrible fever making snow angels without your coat. You looked like a fallen angel.
Did I? Oh, I am cold, but the cold feels marvelous. I feel awake. My skin is tingling.
I must paint you like this.
Leo, Mr. Irving, I must ask you. I know it is not proper, but I do not care today. I do not care at all. When you receive the treatment from my husband, where does he put it, the instrument?
I do not think your husband would like me to say. He would only speak of it in Latin or in Greek.
Well, I only know English. Can you show me on my person?
No. I may be an artist, but I am a gentleman.
There is no such thing. Which is it, Mr. Irving? Do you dare be an artist or a gentleman?
She moves toward him. He moves away.
Look at the snow out the window. Do you not think, Mrs. Givings, that snow is always kind? Because it has to fall slowly to meet the ground slowly, or the eyelash slowly, and things that meet each other slowly are kind.
You are changing the subject.
Indeed, I am.
Meet me slowly, like snow.
She puts her hand on his cheek slowly.
I cannot bear it.
Dr. Givings enters the living room yelling for Annie.
Wait, Annie, we'll need also 10 copper valves.
He sees his wife's hand on Leo's cheek.
Had a good walk, I trust.
Mrs. Givings takes her hand from Leo's cheek.
I discovered your wife in the snow with no coat and insisted upon walking her home to warm her up before she caught a fever.
And you did me a very great service, Mr. Irving.
Goodbye, Mr. Givings, Dr. Givings, Mrs. Givings.
Goodbye.
Dr. Givings turns to his wife.
Was his hand on your cheek?
No, mine was on his.
Well, I see.
And do you mind very much?
A pause. He considers.
It is odd. For some husbands, such things end in a screaming match or even in death, one hand on a cheek. It has come to mean an absolute thing. The end of a book, those dreadful Mrs. Bovary books. But how can it be absolute when there are so many shades and degrees of love? Lady novelists like for it to be a tragedy because it doesn't mean that the affair mattered terribly, but it needn't.
The writer of Madame Bovary was not a woman.
He was French, which is much the same thing.
You dare to make a joke about the French at this moment? Most men would be pale with rage.
Pale with rage, exactly, in a sentimental novel. My point is, this is not the end of the book. You made a mistake, that is all. The treatment I gave you made you excitable. It is my fault. A hand on the cheek. These are muscles, skin, facts. It needn't mean that one is preferred absolutely or that one isn't loved. So why then jealousy? My darling, I don't mind.
Oh. I had hoped you would mind.
She storms out of the room. Dr. Givings is left alone.
Catherine?
He follows after her.
Don't talk to me tonight. Don't talk to me tomorrow. I will take my breakfast in my own room.
A door slamming, a song on the piano. Second scene. A few days later, Leo is painting. Elizabeth, who is nursing Letitia, is nursing Letitia. She is dressed vaguely as the Virgin Mary in one of Mrs. Givings' gowns. Mrs. Givings watches Leo paint. The painting does not face us. We do not see it.
It will be a revolution. I will call it Nursing Madonna. How can there be so few Madonnas in which the baby Jesus actually gives suck?
We are to think of him feeding us, I suppose, not the other way around.
Mrs. Givings gets up and paces. She is jealous of nursing and of being painted. Leo goes to Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, could you just...
He arranges the fabric so her breast is more exposed. Mrs. Givings examines the painting.
Don't look at it. It's not done yet.
Sorry?
Elizabeth, could you just...
He angles her head toward the baby.
There. Beautiful. There is nothing so peaceful as a nursing baby. The baby and the mother become one being, do they not?
Mrs. Givings taps her foot.
You seem nervous, Mrs. Givings.
We should stop. My husband will be home from the club shortly, and he wouldn't approve of this. Not at all.
I don't see why. Your husband is a man of science. Why, then he must understand nature.
Leo resumes painting.
Not supposed to talk to his patients, much less arrange for them to see the bare breasts of the help in my living room.
Leave behind the stranglehold of convention and loosen your corset, Mrs. Givings. You will breathe much better.
She is done eating. She has fallen asleep.
He paints. Mrs. Givings paces.
I can hold the baby.
I need her there for the angle of Elizabeth's hands.
Oh. What day of the week is it anyway?
Wednesday.
Oh, that's right, Wednesday. It is always Wednesday, isn't it? Or it was Wednesday only yesterday. It is almost never Friday. It is never ever Tuesday, but always Wednesday, I find. Smack in the middle of the week with nothing to look forward to but the charwoman coming and cleaning out the ashes. Are you almost done with her hands?
Hands are difficult. You'd think that they would just be 5 quick lines, but no. They have personalities as intimate as faces. Elizabeth's hands, for instance. They are fine hands, with long fingers that remind me of tapered candles. A person one has loved, a memory of their hands. Do they flutter or sit still? Dry, moist, cool on a hot forehead? What? That is what I wish to express in my paintings. The memory of the movement of very particular hands, even though they appear to be unmoving on canvas.
Have you loved many women, Mr. Irving? Do you remember many hands?
I have loved enough women to know how to paint. If I had loved fewer, I would be an illustrator. If I had loved more, I would be a poet.
Are poets required to love many women?
Oh, yes. Love animates every line.
But what if the rest of us mere mortals? I mean, how many times must we fall in love in order to live through the week?
There is also the love of God, love of country, love of children.
Indeed.
I must look at her hands.
The front door opens. Leo stops painting. Dr. Gibbings enters. They startle. Elizabeth covers her breast. Dr. Gibbings is shocked at the scene in his living room. Then he pretends he hasn't seen anything.
You are early for your appointment, Mr. Irving.
Yes.
I will wash up and see you in the operating theater. Good afternoon, Elizabeth. Catherine.
He exits to the operating theater.
Oh, God.
It's all right. As you see, he is a man of science. Nothing upsets or shocks him.
You talk as if that's a crime. What a capital husband you have, completely beyond the dictates of modern society. I love your husband.
Shall I take the baby to the nursery?
Yes, that will be all, Elizabeth. I will put the paint things away. Go to your appointment, Mr. Irving.
Thank you, Elizabeth. You are nothing short of divine. Do you mind terribly being looked at? Being seen?
Who minds being seen?
Who?
Only criminals, I suppose.
Indeed.
Good day, Mr. Irving.
Mrs. Gibbings.
Leo enters the operating theater.
No need to undress all the way. We can be quick about it. Just lower your trousers.
Meanwhile, Mrs. Gibbings tries to hide the painting in the living room.
It seems that you and my wife are becoming acquainted.
Yes. A bit.
I see. She's a wonderful woman, is she not?
Yes.
I'm a lucky man.
Dr. Gibbings inserts the Chattanooga vibrator a little more firmly than usual.
And your health, it seems to be much improved.
Yes. I am painting again. In fact, I cannot stop painting.
How wonderful for you. I am so glad.
Leo has an anal paroxysm.
Oh! Oh!
Yes, I do think you are cured now. We can stop the treatments.
Thank you, doctor. I believe you've saved my life.
Dr. Gibbings puts away the vibrator.
Oh, I'm suddenly drowsy.
Take a nap. Good day.
Dr. Gibbings exits to his private study. Leo drowses. In the living room, the doorbell rings. Mrs. Gibbings answers the door. Mr. and Mrs. Daldry enter.
Oh, Mr. and Mrs. Daldry.
Hello.
Hello.
I have not visited with you since it was raining, Mr. Daldry.
And I've not seen you since you were wet. How have you been well? You look well. Very well.
Aw, thank you.
It's good you're done with that odious nursing business. A woman like you should be enjoying yourself, not shut up in a nursery all day.
Will you do me a favor, my dear, and take a walk around the grounds before my appointment? I wish to speak to Miss Gibbings about my needlework before Dr. Gibbings arrives, and I fear we will bore you.
I don't have much to say on the subject of needlepoint. I'll see you shortly, darling, Mrs. Gibbings.
Take a left turn by the fountain. There's a winter garden. I planted it myself.
I didn't know anything grew in winter.
Oh, yes. Juniper and periwinkle and...
It's all the same to me. But if you planted it, Mrs. Gibbings, I'm sure it's lovely.
He exits.
I wanted to speak with you.
Come and sit. You have taken up needlework.
No, I hate needlework. I have been thinking about what you said, about having two experiences of the same event. I want very much to, I do not know how to, but I was thinking if we go into the operating theater again, And if we place the instrument just so, and if you held it, and then I held it, but we did kind of a...
Mrs. Daltrey gestures oddly. Elizabeth enters.
I laid her down to sleep in her pram. I am sorry about the...
Never mind, Elizabeth. You may go now. Wait, Elizabeth, before you leave, perhaps you can settle a question. Mrs. Daltrey and I have had 2 experiences of the same event. Have you ever had this sensation? Either you have shivers all over your body and you feel like running and your feet get very hot as though you're dancing on devil's coals.
Or you see unaccountable patterns of light, of electricity under your eyelids, and your heart races and your legs feel very weak as though you cannot walk.
Or your face gets suddenly hot like a strange sudden sunburn.
Or there are red splotches up one side of your entire body, a strange rash. Here.
And the feeling of burning, as though you'll get no relief and your mouth is dry and you have to like lick your lips and you find your face making a very ugly expression, so you cover your face with your hands.
And sometimes a great outpouring of liquid and the sheets are wet, but it is not an unpleasant sensation, only a little frightening.
Is that a riddle?
Has that ever happened to you?
I do not know. The sensations are so contradictory. Does anything unite them?
Many of them are down below.
Oh, I see. Well, the things you describe, some of them seem to be sensations that an invalid would have, or someone with a horrible fever, but others sound like sensations that women might have when they are having relations with their husbands.
Pause.
I'm sorry. Perhaps you were joking. Perhaps I shouldn't have said.
With their husbands?
How interesting.
Those sensations you're describing, they are not from having relations with your husbands?
Good heavens, no.
No, good God.
I don't know what I should do if I felt those things in the presence of my husband. I'd be so embarrassed. I would leave the room immediately. As it is, my husband is very considerate. When he comes to my room at night, I'm asleep. He tells me to keep my eyes shut, and I do. So I feel only the darkness and then the pain. I lie very still. I do not see his face. My husband has always been very considerate.
Oh, of course, of course.
But the instrument produces a very different kind of pain, does it not? Very different from the other kind of pain with my husband.
Leo enters the room, a bit dazed.
Ladies.
They nod to him. Elizabeth is embarrassed to see him.
Goodbye then.
I will see you home. I have a good enough likeness. I can finish the painting at my studio.
I can walk home myself.
No, I wouldn't hear of it. I will walk you home.
No, thank you, Mr. Irving.
Please. You did me a great service today. I can at least see that you get home.
Oh, don't go just yet.
I'll just see Elizabeth home. Oh, the painting.
I'll get it.
She hands him the painting. Elizabeth exits.
I will see you soon.
I'm afraid my treatments are at an end. I'm cured.
But that's impossible.
Dr. Gibbings enters from the operating theater and sees the goodbye between Leo and Catherine.
I will see you again. Never fear. Goodbye, Catherine. Dr. Gibbings.
He takes her
Farewell.
hand and then sees Dr. Gibbings and then drops it. Leo is at the door.
You're muted.
Thank you. Mrs. Daldry, I did not hear you arrive. I'll just let you get ready.
Mrs. Daldry moves to the operating theater and undresses with the help of Annie in the living room.
What can you be thinking of? Did you mean to embarrass me?
I thought it was only a scene in a book to you. Or a fact.
Do you think it's escaped my notice that you haven't breakfasted with me for 5 days running?
Well, breakfast is not a very romantic meal. I decided to skip it.
Is every meal supposed to be romantic?
I do not enjoy you silently reading your scientific journals while I eat my toast.
Oh, you prefer grand passions over toast. My God, woman, we are married. A man needs to be quiet at least once a day.
So I'll be quiet then. Here I am, quiet as a mouse.
Mr. Daldry enters the living room.
What a beautiful winter garden. I'm sorry. Am I interrupting?
No, we were just discussing breakfast. You know, in Italy, they hardly eat breakfast, just a little bit of sweet cracker to dip in very strong coffee. They eat something light to recover from the great passions they've spent during the night. Better to skip breakfast and move on to lunch. A great big lunch when the silence isn't quite so loud. No, the silence is not quite so deafening at lunch.
How do you know about biscotti?
Mr. Irving told me.
I see.
I know nothing about biscotti. I like ham and eggs for breakfast, sausage too. A big breakfast is important for one's energy, Mrs. Givings. I have once heard it said that small women should eat large animals. You ought to eat a bit of meat for breakfast, some bacon or some sausage.
Oh, I have plenty of energy, Mr. Daldry. I don't need to borrow energy from a cow. I have so much energy, I do not know what to do with it, you see.
Annie sticks her head in the living room.
We're ready for you, Doctor.
Will you excuse me?
Yes, of course, darling.
Yes, of course, certainly.
Dr. Givings enters the operating theater. He is distracted. He puts the vibrator on Mrs. Daldry's torso.
Dr. Givings,
Yes?
is something wrong?
Terribly sorry. I am distracted.
He moves the vibrator. In the living room, Dr. Daldry and Mrs. Givings sit on the couch. He moves toward her.
Mrs. Givings, I don't know how to converse in a drawing room.
He tries to kiss her. She slaps him.
Mr. Daldry, what can you be thinking of?
You said about your energies. I thought.
You insult me.
You have no idea how I long for a woman of energy. My wife is so tired. She's so tired all the time.
How dare you speak ill of your wife in my presence? Go, please.
Will you have the goodness to tell Mrs. Daldry to meet me at home? I will send a carriage for her.
Mrs. Givings nods. Mr. Daldry leaves. She goes to the door of the operating theater and hesitates there, sinking down, upset.
You are muted again.
Thank you, sorry. It has been taking longer with you of late. Perhaps I need to build a new instrument with a few more beats per minute. Perhaps the body gets accustomed to so many beats per minute and then requires more.
He adjusts the vibrator.
Nothing. Is it past 3 minutes?
He looks at his pocket watch.
Perhaps if Annie tries.
Yes, of course. Annie, why don't you have a go? I will attend to some business.
Annie takes the vibrator and tries. Dr. Givings leaves the room. He almost trips on his wife at the door.
My God, you are acting the part of a madwoman in a play, listening at doors.
You will offer to her what you deny to me.
It is medicine, my love.
And I say it isn't.
I thought I heard a slap.
It was nothing at all.
Mrs. Daldry has a louder than usual paroxysm. They both hear it.
Well, your work is done now. You can go to the club and argue about the benefits of the alternating current over above the direct current.
And you? Do you prefer the alternating or direct?
Direct. From here to here.
She gestures from his heart to her heart.
Interesting. I would have guessed alternating. More complicated, changing direction dozens of times per second, faces slapped by nobody, Italian breakfasts, etc. I'll be at the club.
He exits. Mrs. Givings moves toward the operating theater. Annie and Mrs. Daldry are sitting in a weirdly compromised post-coital state of reflection.
Annie, have you ever used the instrument upon yourself?
Oh, no. For I've never been ill. I've scarcely had a day's illness in my life. Maybe a bit of a stomach bug, but nothing mental. I'm sound as a horse. I was raised on a farm.
I could hold the instrument on you if you would like. It is not unpleasant, and perhaps it would be interesting for you to experience it.
I do not think the doctor would like it.
Mrs. Givings enters the operating theater.
My husband has gone to the club, and Mr. Daldry has also left. He sent a carriage for you. They both said their farewells.
Thank you, Miss Givings.
Shall I leave you? I could...
A suspended moment in which we are not sure if we might witness three women playing with a vibrator together. All of them think about it. They all look at one another and then at the instrument.
I must get dressed.
Of course. Annie, do you need any assistance cleaning up?
No, thank you, Mrs. Givings. It's very easy to clean up.
All right, then. I'll leave you.
Mrs. Givings exits. Annie helps Mrs. Daldry get dressed.
Well, then.
I suppose we could continue with my Greek lesson.
Oh, yes. I believe we left off with the early Greek philosophers. Thales thought the earth was suspended on water. Floated there, and he thought that all magnets had souls because they moved towards one another.
I can well believe that magnets have souls. When I look into dark eyes like magnets, I am moved unaccountably. You have very dark eyes, like magnets. Has any man ever told you so?
No man has told me much aside from pass the clamp.
They should, Annie. They really should. Whatever happened to Thales?
He never married. His mother told him he should marry, and he said, "It's too early." And when she pressed him again, 10 years later, he said, "It's too late."
And you? Why have you never married?
One day I woke up and it was too late.
I see. Annie, I have been thinking. I wonder whether I could purchase one of these instruments for home use. The doctor is so busy, and I really feel I'm almost better. My color has returned, and I wake up in the morning and feel hopeful. I could use it only as required when, for example, I have trouble sleeping, as I often do, and I can't very well call on the doctor past midnight.
Well, it might be dangerous for home use because of, the potential for electrocution. But I will ask the doctor. He's very open to inventions.
I would be too embarrassed to ask.
No, I will ask for you.
Goodbye then, Annie.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Annie,
For what?
for the Greek lesson.
Mrs. Daldry exits. Annie washes her hands. She looks at the vibrator, thinking of using it on herself. She thinks better of it, puts it away. Meanwhile, Mrs. Givings is lying on the sofa in the living room.
Are you quite all right, Miss Givings? Your color looks off.
Can you hear me?
Oh, now I can.
I am not myself.
Is there anything I can do?
No, thank you. Mrs. Daldry, did you dream of love at a young age?
Yes.
And what did you think it would be like?
I thought it would be never wanting for anything, being surrounded and lifted up like resting on water for eternity.
And is that what you have found in marriage?
There have been moments of rest, but as it turns out, the earth rests on air, not on water, and the air can feel very insubstantial at times, even though it is holding you up invisibly.
Yes.
Do you mind if I play your piano?
Oh, please do.
Mrs. Daldry plays the piano, full of longing. From off stage, the baby cries.
Excuse me.
Mrs. Givings exits to attend to the baby. Annie enters and listens to Mrs. Daldry play. Annie goes to sit beside Mrs. Daldry on the piano bench. Mrs. Daldry finishes the song. Annie claps. They kiss.
What?
Oh,
How strange.
oh dear.
I had better not see you ever again.
Yeah, I suppose not.
Goodbye then, Annie.
Yeah, goodbye.
Mrs. Daldry exits. Mrs. Givings enters. Annie?
What a sad song she played. I believe it made me tear up a little. Goodbye, Mrs. Givings.
Oh, don't leave, Annie. Dr. Givings is at the club and I have very little company.
I'm afraid I must go.
What is the matter?
That song made me sad. Goodbye.
Mrs. Givings alone. The doorbell rings. Elizabeth enters, not entirely herself.
Elizabeth? I did not expect you. What is it?
Miss Givings, I came to tell you that today was my last day working for you. My husband doesn't like me gone so much. He wants me home with my own children.
But you can't leave us, Elizabeth. What on earth will we do without you?
She is almost ready to have cow's milk or a little bit of rice porridge.
I suppose. I was not thinking only of the food.
Elizabeth nods slowly.
But why today? I don't understand.
Mr. Irving insisted on walking me home. He was not inappropriate, but he kept hold of my arm. He paid me a large sum of money for the sitting, and he walked me up to my front door.
Oh, dear.
My husband was home. My husband saw him and me And the painting.
Oh, was your husband very angry about the painting?
The painting? No, he cried when he saw the painting. It's your hands, he said. Mr. Irving must be a good painter. It's hard to paint hands. But he doesn't want me working here. Not anymore.
Of course. Yes, I understand.
No, you don't. I'll just say goodbye to Lottie. I have grown fond of her.
Yes. Well, she is in the nursery. She is fat and happy, all thanks to you. Elizabeth, how old was your Henry Douglas when he died?
12 weeks.
What did he die of?
Cholera.
I am sorry.
Thank you.
I think I should die of sorrow in your place.
Die of sorrow. A mother of two cannot die of sorrow.
But how do you go on after?
My mother told me to pray each day since I was a little girl, to pray that you borrow everything, everyone you love from God. That way your heart doesn't break when you have to give your son or your mother or your husband back to God. I prayed, Jesus, let me be humble. I borrowed my child. I borrowed my husband. I borrowed my own life from you, God. But he felt like mine, not like God's. He felt like mine, more mine than anything. God must have this huge, horrible cabinet, all the babies that get returned, and all those babies inside, they're all crying, even with God himself to rock them to sleep. Still, they want their mothers. So when I started to feel something for this baby, for your baby, I thought, no, take her back, God. When I first met her, all I could think was, she is alive and Henry is not. I had all this milk. I wished it would dry up. Just get through the year, I thought. Your milk will dry up and you will forget. The more healthy your baby got, the more dead my baby became. I thought of her like a tick. I thought, fill her up and then pop. You will see the blood of my Henry underneath. But she seemed so grateful for the milk. Sometimes I hated her for it. But she would look at me. She would give me this look. I do not know what to call it if it is not called love. I hope every day you keep her close to you, and you remember the blood that her milk was made from, the blood of my son, my Henry. Goodbye, misgivings.
Goodbye, Elizabeth.
Mrs. Gibbings touches Elizabeth's elbow. Elizabeth nods. Elizabeth pulls away and exits to the nursery.
Thank you.
But Elizabeth is out the door, Mrs. Gibbings alone. She moves toward the operating theater. The doorbell rings. It is Leo.
Ah, you have made quite a mess of things with for Elizabeth. You are muted as well.
I know. I'm sorry. I've come to say goodbye. I'm moving to Paris
When?
tomorrow.
Take me with you.
Are you out of your mind?
You're surprised? It was you who seduced me.
What?
All that talk of women, 2/3 done? That was me. You were talking of me, were you not?
I was talking of paintings.
No one has ever spoken to me of these things before, of beauty, of prostitutes, of, my God, of Italy. How could I have misunderstood your intentions? I'm in love with you.
Oh, dear Catherine, I'm afraid I cannot love you. If there is any type to whom I am attracted, it veers towards women with doe eyes, and your eyes are more thin. The light bounces off of them rather than into them. And I cannot see your soul hovering here, where I would want to. Your soul is locked somewhere inside your body, so I cannot see it. Another man could perhaps bring your soul out of your eyes, but it's not me, I'm afraid. I do care for you, though.
Try. Try to bring my soul out to here. If you look into my eyes, see, I will try. Are you bringing another woman with you?
No. I am going alone. Don't you see? It's Elizabeth whom I love.
Elizabeth?
Yes.
Ah, I see nothing. I understand nothing. My God, Elizabeth!
Yes. And she doesn't care for me. Not at all. I told her of my affections on our walk, and she slapped me. No, I will go to Paris alone. I am married to my solitude.
I can be your solitude. I will be as quiet as a mouse. You have a child. I understand solitude. I am very lonely.
I do not understand your loneliness, Mrs. Givings. You have a child, a husband, a home.
Yes, I am very ungrateful. I am sure that God will punish me.
He tries to embrace him.
No, you do not love me. You only think you do. You love your husband. He's a good man. Goodbye now.
He kisses her hands.
Elizabeth is in the nursery, if you wish to say goodbye to her.
I cannot bear to see her. Just give her this, won't you?
Leo kisses Mrs. Givings on the cheek.
Come visit me in France. I promise you, you'll love the paintings.
He leaves. She goes to the operating theater. She plugs in the vibrator. She puts it to her private parts, but she is too sad for it to work. She cries, it hums along. Dr. Givings enters.
My dear, what on earth are you doing?
I'm alone.
You are not alone. I am here. Have you been using that instrument upon yourself?
Dr. Givings shuts off the vibrator.
I am so lonely. Elizabeth is leaving us. Leo is leaving us. Everyone is leaving. You are gone. You are at the club or in the next room. Always in the next room with the door locked. You see that women are capable of pressing a button themselves.
Darling.
When you touch them, the other women and Leo with the machine, did you feel love for them when you touched them there? Was it like love?
No, I only wanted them to feel better.
And when you married me, did you want to love me, or did you want to make me feel better?
A doctor always wants everyone to feel better.
Did you want to love me?
Yes. And you, with your hands on other men's faces, do you love them? Do you love Mr. Irving?
A little.
I have a strange feeling in my stomach.
What is it?
My eyes feel funny and my stomach feels jumpy. I believe I'm jealous.
Give up your operating theater, darling.
And do what instead?
Love me. Love me for your job.
All day long.
All day long. I have heard that some women do not need the vibrating instrument to give them paroxysms, that relations with their husbands have much the same effect. Love me for your job.
I would like to love you.
Would you?
Yes. I have not known how.
You said to me when my hand was on another man's cheek that there were all types and shades of love. But what is it then, this very particular way in which you love me? What color? What temperature? And please do not say, you are my wife, I am your husband.
I do not have the words.
Please, try.
That is why they have poets to classify all the degrees of love. It is for scientists to classify the maladies arising from the want of it.
Try.
Do not make fun of me. Do you promise?
I promise.
Kissing tenderly, each places he names it all in the face.
I bless thee, temporomandibular joint. I bless thee, buccal artery and nerve. I bless thee, depressor anguli oris. I bless thee, zygomatic arch. I bless thee, temporalis fascia. I bless thee, Catherine.
Mrs. Givings cries. It is so intimate.
Open me.
Here.
Away from the machine. In the garden. Undress me there.
You wish me to undress in the garden in December?
Yes, and please do not call me impractical. Our whole future depends upon it.
Dr. and Mrs. Givings kiss. Although the domestic space seems terribly permanent, a settee, a statuette, suddenly it disappears and we are in a sweet small winter garden. Snow covers the trees, in the spring flower with pink flowers.
Undress me. Do not close your eyes. Look at me.
He undresses her partially.
The street lamps are coming on. Someone will see us.
No one will see. They are not electric yet. Thank God something still flickers.
She undresses him.
Are you cold?
No. Are you cold?
No.
We don't need to see all of his body. It is dark out, but we do see the moon glowing off his skin, off his back and shoulders. He need not face us. She has never seen him naked before. She has only seen him under the covers.
How beautiful you are. Your body. I have never before seen that little bit there under the covers. Or that bit there. Or this beautiful line here. I have never felt this shadow there, but I have felt this shadow there, but I have never seen it. How it curves.
Pointing to different lines on his body.
I am embarrassed.
Don't be. Lie down and make a snow angel.
He lies on his back and makes an angel in the snow. She lies on top of him. They make an angel. They make their wings go back and forth, and it snows on them. Outside on the street corner, the lamp goes on one by one. flickering, insubstantial.
Catherine.
Oh. God. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh.
And the rest of the lights go out. The end.
Tip your waiters.
We'll be here all week. Try the veal.
Now the question is, was that anticlimactic?
That was so much fun to see. Thank you all so much. You're all so fucking amazing. Literally. I sat here for the entire performance and I'm just beside myself. I mean, like, literally, like, when we can have theater again, do this show.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Real.
Hashtag goals. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Veronica, I love you.
Don't we all?
You are among the finest actresses in Denver today.
Oh.
Thanks.
So true.
And the rest of them are here
I
too.
can't. Thank you. You're so sweet.
Rav'n, I sent you a message on Facebook, and I was like, "No, I'm in love with you. 100%. 100%. I want your honesty. I want your charm. I want your vulnerability in everything. Oh, honey. All of you. I mean, like, I'm so, like, I sat here, I guess I was your audience member, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, yes.
Yes,
thank you too. This is the kind of theater I want to fucking see. I want to see something real. I want to see something with heart.
Hell yeah.
And I got that from all of you. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Like, I'm literally about to cry. Anyway, also, Andy or whomever is in charge of Miscreants, I want to read next time.
All right, you're top of the list.
Please, thank you. I mean, like, it was so much. It was so much fun, and B, there was so much heart to it. I mean, Henry Awards all around.
Oh, thank you.
You're so sweet.
Not that shit means anything, but thank you. It was so much fun to watch this.
We don't want Henry Awards. We want Owen Awards.
That's right.
Yeah.
We get Owen. Yay.
I'm using my reactions button on Zoom for that shit. God damn.
There we go.
Booyah.
I love
Well,
it.
thank you so much for joining us, and I feel like it can speak for the rest of the Miscreants in saying we're so glad to have you here and watching, and we can't wait to have you in the next reading of this, which will keep on happening. So
yeah, next time you're Catherine.
Yeah, you.
Yeah, we usually just choose a show by vote, but we're just gonna do this show for like 7 months every reading.
Just rotate the cast. I
Yeah.
love it. Next time I want to be Annie.
Will just be Owen for all of the roles, and we'll follow you with the compliments that you just.
And I really want to thank the Brown Wizard.
David.
And I totally want to thank the guy who did the stage descriptions.
Yeah.
Because you have the most phenomenal background.
Yeah.
I was
Clearly the best.
Yes, I love this.
I don't even know what that's from.
I don't either. I just looked it up as like, I think it's like a steampunk city.
Very steampunk, very funky. I thought like, what was it? That steampunk movie they did, the Traveling Cities or whatever.
Yeah.
Fucking Mortal Engines.
Mortal Engines.
Yeah, Mortal
Yes.
Engines.
Wow.
Yeah.
Terrible
I
movie.
love that movie. Underrated.
I think so too.
But very freaky. So when you reached for your computer, it totally didn't look like a butthole. Although it really kind of did.
That's
Boy,
great.
if I had a nickel for every time.
For every time I put my fingers toward my screen, looked like a butthole.
Yeah.
Veronica, are you recording from a speakeasy in 1929? Because that's essentially what it looks like in the background.
No, it's my guy's apartment, and he has this lovely like painting of Paris right here. So it's my back.
Which looks like a speakeasy from 1929.
Pretty fun, yeah. Thank you.
And you also have the best fucking rig.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, you
your,
haven't even seen half of it, buddy. Like this is attached to a Zoom live track L12 that records 12 separate tracks at the same time.
Holy crap.
That is full on Radiohead like desire. I'm so jealous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty
All of us are. It's crazy.
I was planning on getting this pre-COVID, and I'm working on it with my radio theater company. So yeah, I'm excited to play with this and when we can all get together again.
Well, anyway, all I have to say to all of you is congratulations. It was a wonderful Zoom play to watch and enjoy, and I'm just fucking jealous of all of you.
Well, next time.
You won't need to be jealous next time, Owen.
I mean, no, I totally want to. I want to read in. Give me like, give me like a 3-line kind of like whatever, like, or the full-on lead.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, when you can ask for it, might as well go for it. Yeah. Unless you have any restrictions on any kinds of characters you want to play, we'll put you in any role.
Nice.
Yes, I want to play all the roles.
Done. Next.
I wanted to. No, honestly, like I wanted to play the role tonight of the guy who gets the booty hole.
Yeah,
Leo. All right, Leo.
Great.
You know what? I do have direct experience there. I shouldn't say that. I mean, I kind of wanted to be like, okay, let me show you my vibrator. my beehole vibrator. Congratulations. It was a lovely, lovely play. I'm so happy for all of you. And I want to be involved in the next one.
You're going to be involved. You're at the top of the list right now.
We'll tag you in it when we post the call for the next one. So that way you get a notification and you can sign it.
Thank you, Gandalf.
It's not what I normally say, but you shall definitely pass.
Hey-o. Oh my god, it's amazing.
You want to ask the questions about the play before?
Yeah. So yeah, just before that, I did post in the chat the hki.org. It's Helen Keller International donation charity. Sorry. I wasn't sure if we were doing it, but just if you feel like donating to a charity, I think most importantly right now for people who are on this call right now, obviously make sure that you have your ballot filled out and that you vote tomorrow if you haven't voted already. I think that's like super important.
Who hasn't already fucking voted?
Who
I mean, I
hasn't?
haven't turned mine in yet. I am just quite the procrastinator. But
Do you need a ride? Do you need a ride to the polls?
no, I've got a car. It was just mainly about, this was the first election that I kind of did my research very intensely to make sure that I was voting on the correct things.
Excellent.
It took me a while.
Some of
I mean-
those constitutions, like the amendments, are pretty fucking tricksy.
Yeah,
I have a
You gotta
friend-
fucking vote. Do it right now.
this moment.
make sure that you vote. I'm not going to put pressure on
there?
other people because I understand
Do it.
that COVID has happened.
Don't
and
not do it.
depression has happened. Make sure that you vote by tomorrow night. If you are still filling out your ballot, please don't feel the pressure that I just felt by everybody in the fucking call, you
7
asshole.
p.m. 7 p.m. You gotta get it in before.
I offered to give you a
And
ride.
if you know anybody that's not registered, Colorado lets you register at the polling place the day of.
One of
Yeah.
you.
Thank you,
Natalie.
Natalie. Yeah, make sure that you vote. If you feel like donating to charities outside of that, as long as you are not donating to people that are making this world worse, aka
Can we also just give a shout out to Andy's Bud Light?
Yeah.
Star player.
Come on,
As long as
Bud
it's not
Light.
to Andy's typing of the vibrator, that's somehow a machine gun.
I to see like,
You live in Colorado with all of the best fucking beer
If
in the country, and you're drinking Bud Light. Andy,
Reliable.
come on.
if it's not less than 20 pounds, I'm not interested.
Next time, Yingling.
Yeah, you're right. Yingling would be far better.
there
All
you
right,
go.
I
All right,
am.
kids.
Yes, thank you.
You're all amazing. Love you. Good night.
Love you,
Bye.
Owen. You take
Nice,
it easy.
thank you,
Yeah,
Owen.
anybody else that feels like they have to leave, please feel free to leave. But I don't know if Andy has questions set up for asking right now.
I didn't plan on much unless anyone wants to talk about what was their major, like what was most impactful or most surprising about this particular play for all of you, or anyone, or no one. Everything's great.
Just a little background in case people didn't know. We're kind of revamping, instead of doing discussion on a different time, we're like discussing after the show now.
But it's only like 30 minutes tops.
Yeah, like a little short.
And we may also be releasing a podcast with a deeper discussion about
Oh,
this.
me.
No, we decided it. There's an asshole in the corner over there. Anyway. so yes.
On my screen, it's really rude of you to say that about Leo Irving.
No. Sorry, didn't mean to point fingers in any particular direction. So if anyone would like to go first, feel free to jump on in. What was most impactful or most surprising about this to you?
I'll go ahead and go first. I guess for me, what was so surprising and kind of impactful, I guess, is just, the wrap up that, they finally get to have physical love between them after living this life of kind of repression, et cetera, et cetera. So that was probably the most eye-opening and kind of touching thing was that beautiful moment in the winter garden when everything transforms, and so yeah, that's what I liked.
It's such a good moment too.
So good.
I think for me, the most striking thing about this is the power of words, of being able to identify things. So like the stress and strain that women were undergoing was identified as a medical condition, as hysteria. And therefore the tools were out of their hands to fix it. It was in the tools, like the tool belt of men. But like, even when she, and at the end, when she confronted her husband, like, find the words, I need you to give me the words. And he couldn't find it. Like it was so beautiful, because this entire, sorry, hang on just a second. Would you mind? This entire play is filled with such sumptuous language and words and people discovering things as they're saying it. It's like a whole uncharted country of people discovering how they're feeling and the things that they're going through. It's really wonderful.
I feel like that was so well phrased, and because in some ways it's not even just a whole country of people discovering what they're feeling, but almost a whole gender or more. You know, even with the individual having an anal paroxysm, like, oh my God, like it's a play about discovery, and on all sides, and it never stops happening. Oh, such a good observation.
To
Erin?
piggyback on that,
along.
So,
go ahead.
all right, Natalie.
Okay, I kind of along the same lines. The language that really stood out to me the most was just kind of the return to the language about bodies, about like bodily autonomy, and about like you know, it kind of ties back into how like Elizabeth felt like, you know, like this person was a part of me for so long, you know, her child, and then it was, you know, told to her that like it's God's child, and so like it's the separation between what you're feeling and what everyone else is kind of telling you that you're feeling, in the same vein that the doctors are telling, you know, the women what they're kind of going through and experiencing. Even though they don't have the language for themselves, they know the language isn't fitting what they're experiencing at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel privileged enough as a man to talk about the exact experience that women go through when having orgasms. So I feel like I have enough knowledge to discuss this in depth. But God,
no, like experience giving me paroxysm.
Right. I think it was an intentional point, giving it in a lot of ways. You know, the male perspective is so clinical and dry, and even having a man who had a discovery of his own with his own paroxysm, and yet nothing in that experience can come close to a shared experience. But honestly, to me, one of the most like touching and surprising things was the generosity of the women in this play. Of, I felt a thing and I don't understand it, but I want to understand. I want to share it with you. That there's this selfishness that tends to be ascribed to not just orgasms, but love and sexuality, that is almost never discussed in almost any other medium. But this is such a generous play, and this calls for generous performers and generous actors, and actresses, and you know, performers in general. It's so touching to me to see these moments that are just a microcosm of the grander discussion of all of this. Such a good play.
I agree. I love this play so much. I always find something new in it every time I read it. So.
Yeah. So what else was surprising or very impactful to those of us? Yes, Erin. Yes, we skipped over you earlier.
I've been trying to tell. I'll put my hand down now. This is piggybacking on top of what Veronica said, though. Like, it's an apparent thing that you kind of know, but for me, the biggest shock in this show is the separation between what like domestic intimacy is and physical intimacy is, and they specifically highlight that that's only for the upper classes, because when they talk to Elizabeth about it, she's like, with your husband, and they're like, oh no, we wouldn't do that. And so the conclusion of the play is like, we have a physical intimate moment, and it's like even reflected in the fact that Catherine can't have that with her baby, because not being able to breastfeed is also an ultimate physical intimacy, and that's a real shitty thing that like is beyond her control. Whereas their like intimacy as like husband and wife is just like a cultural thing that they're told not to be doing, not like a physical impossibility for them at the time.
Yeah, well, and I think you're exactly right. The difference between societal or cultural intimacy and like personal intimacy, like the moment where Catherine was like saying, "Okay, kiss me while you use this on me," it was a discovery for both of them, and then to have the doctor immediately go, "Oh no, I made a mistake. You shouldn't be feeling those sorts of things." Oh, that's hard.
I'm supposed to be fixing you.
Yes. God damn it! If that's
you didn't even finish.
But then also like even the detachment of, oh well, it's normal for you to have some sort of an attraction to another man, and I'm not really that bothered.
And the irony with like, I'm supposed to be fixing you is like, no, you're slowly breaking me by not.
And I mean, I worry a lot that, God, unfortunately, I worry that some of the men that come and see this, or at least those that identify themselves as men, they come and see this, until the very end might be getting a different lesson from this is something that bothers me. Because it's so clinical and so detached until the very end there. And I can think of so many other plays that sort of resolve in the like, oh, well, you're just being hysterical and this isn't that important. Like whatever you're feeling is really not that important because of the medical or scientific aspect of it. But I think Sarah Ruhl does such a good job in the writing of this and in the characterization of this to bring that back around to science itself does not always have the vocabulary to talk about the feet tingling and plenty of our patients cry out to Jesus or God while enduring this treatment.
You're fine. I'll go wash my hands.
Yes.
Congratulations, you're cured.
Thank you. I mean, can we talk about the diminishment of not just a personal experience, but a physical, psychological experience?
Or the help, the instrument's not working. Annie, take care of this.
Right. Please let me outsource your pleasure. Actually,
because it takes hours.
Yeah. It took more than 3 minutes. I'm done. Sorry. I'll see y'all later.
Your expensive hands.
Expensive Hands would be a good band name. No, this whole thing. I mean, I'd like to quote an animated series called Big Mouth, which referenced kind of this sort of thing of the development of the vibrator, where one character says, from a sociological perspective, this is pretty fucked up. But on the other hand, I guess it's okay because everyone deserves, this is where the quote ends. I guess everyone deserves the ability to have that, the time and the ability to have that discovery. And I actually was not expecting Leo to have the same discovery of an anal paroxysm and the stimulation of prostate gland, for an example. Because even, I mean, kudos to Sarah Ruhl. I feel like there is the most discussion of a male orgasm. Then there's the discussion of a female orgasm, and then there's occasionally the discussion of a prostate orgasm. So I think that Sarah Ruhl did a great job of, of saying there is more, Horatio, in heaven and earth than you've probably discovered in your own personal recreational time. And it's almost yeah, that was, I twisted. I mean, Shakespeare was always talking about sex. So like, I feel like this was almost more encouraging than not of experimentation and investment in a partner and in yourself than just, oh, well, why does it matter if a woman doesn't have an orgasm because she can get pregnant either way? It reminds me that we are still fucked up as a society in many ways, even in as free as we are right now.
Well, but I mean, the entire undercurrent of Mrs. Daldry getting the treatments was because she wasn't servicing her husband, and it was really stressing him out.
Yes.
Honestly, yeah, and he like you said, like everybody, all these characters are like so generous and everything like that. He was the only selfish one.
Yeah.
Like he seriously brought her in because like, okay, I can't stand her. Please fix her. And then she gets all fixed up. He's like, great, and I still don't like her. Okay, you kiss me now.
Yeah.
I do like that her entire like depression and health conditions were cured by just getting some orgasms, because that would be nice if that would fix everything.
Right? Been there, done that.
You would have some perspective if only you could come. But yet, God, okay, this is a deep cut, but has anyone read the King Killer Chronicles?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So it's a fantasy series where at one point the main character goes to train with a bunch of, lots of hands. Okay. People leaving.
I think Rav'n was leaving.
Yeah.
Rav'n. Oh, thank you, Rav'n. Sorry.
I heard you talk about your nerdy book, and she was like, "Peace."
Hands waving. Sorry. So at one point, the main character goes to study with a bunch of elves, and the main character gets distracted because his fighting partner is gorgeous, and she goes, "Well, do you need to get your anger out?" And he goes, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Men are full of anger, and when they have sex, they can." Afterwards they can focus and learn things. So having sex gets their anger out, and then they become productive again.
That actually goes back to also like the I believe it was the Hindu religion too, that believed that God, if only I could remember all the gods' names, but basically the woman god, brought in all of the anger from the male god, into herself, and then essentially saved the universe. So
right, yeah, which is great. Except I think what Sarah Ruhl is saying here is women have anger too, which is we should be okay. And this is my perspective, but we should be shocked that the perspective was, oh, only men have anger and only men get distracted when they're horny and whatever. If again, from a sociological perspective, why was it so surprising, as Elizabeth's character demonstrates, that some women have orgasms when having sex and some don't, and some people don't even know that that's a thing that can happen? Why are we that surprised? And if the answer isn't just the patriarchy, then like what? I mean, it's a societal thing, isn't it?
Right. It could be the patriarchy, but it could also be just the ideas of like a hedonistic society too on that. So the idea that the rich and the wealthy have to be sort of these morally upstanding, righteous people, whereas the lower class just like, no, they can give in to all that. They can give in to all that. So, the idea that Elizabeth and her family come from a lower society. So to them, it's just natural. And to, the rich people just like, wait a minute, you would never do anything like that. No.
Pish posh. Yes.
Yes.
I think it almost cycles back
to
to kind of education on different levels. I mean,
go on.
When you get to the point where you're the head of how you're educating society, and you're the one that's coming up with the research and funding and all of these things, and then you end up kind of blinded by your own research, whereas kind of the trickle down levels have to discover things and find out things for themselves. And so I think when you kind of get to different stages of education, like, I mean, Mrs. Daldry and Mrs. Gibbings aren't uneducated women. They're obviously very well off women.
Yes.
you know, they know languages, they know piano, they know all of these things, and yet at the same time they're hindered by their education that was focused on things other than personal and interpersonal kind of relationships. But when you get to people like Elizabeth, who obviously wouldn't have gotten any kind of education, the things that she knows are from experience, and that level kind of goes back to how she filters back through life and how it kind of feeds back up the pole. And so I think it's a lot of policing education ends up with how, you know, the system kind of breaks down.
I think you're exactly right that being educated in something does not mean that you know fucking anything about it. God, that's a weird dichotomy.
Yeah. You can study all you want about it, but until you do it, you haven't actually done
it. In a way, yes.
And it's like those there's some famous quote by someone that's like, if you can explain it academically but you can't explain it to another person that doesn't understand it, then do you really know it?
Yeah, if you can't explain it to a 6-year-old, you yourself don't understand
and we
it.
can't.
Well, I love it when men describe the female orgasm to me.
Does that happen a lot?
More often than you would think, actually.
Oh God.
Funny story. I was in the store. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
No.
No. A man walked up.
Were you in the vegetable section?
Fill in the blanks.
God. Okay.
So this eggplant is representative of.
I thought it was just the emoji, not any particular vegetable. Okay, well, I would like to take a moment where I personally stop talking because it's a bad habit of mine. What if there's anything more, like, what else would you all like to share about the impact of this play, or relations to, as Veronica has brought up, your real life experiences with this sort of thing? Why does this matter?
Well, at least from my perspective, you know, to see such a lack of interest in the female orgasm, like even at this time period, sort of like shocks me, because at least for, you know, most of my personal like sexual experience, it's always been about the woman first, and then the guy comes second. So to see this sort of like blatant disregard about, you know, for the female's pleasure, it still catches me off guard. And even today when there are some things about that brought up, I swear I had another point to go off of that too, but I completely forgot it. But
you just wanted to tell us about your orgasms. It's okay.
Well, you know.
Yeah,
everybody gets one.
So about my orgasms. No, I'm just kidding. One thing that really stood out to me was, I mean, the use of Black bodies to service white people and white children, you know, and we barely even touched the surface of that. It was so subtle and so under the radar to like just
Yeah. Oh God, that's an amazing point, Veronica. Holy crap. I mean, I know he said it wasn't going to talk, but the way that in particular white men have employed other persons and other races and other genders for their own purposes is absolutely at discussion at the heart of this. And I think what we got to see was one very small example of a person realizing that the world is not meant for that sort of a separation, and that there is more than just what your clinical speech can describe. But the taking advantage of women and people of color is at the heart of this by a huge margin. And that's something that should honestly be discussed more than it is.
Elizabeth, as a character, was the only person who was not pursuing an agenda of pursuing another person in this. She was just, you know, doing a job, and it's just the racialized history of wet nurses. I mean, they touched on it in their own incredibly racist way in the play. It's interesting. Yeah.
It's stunning, and thinking of it that way is amazing. All right. Any additional or final thoughts on the Vibrator play? Would you want to partake in this? Would you want to produce this or design it?
Fuck yes.
I would. I think it's definitely think it's a story that needs to be told.
Yeah. Okay, we have a consensus there, it seems. So in 2022, in 2022, once the pandemic is over and we can do live theater again, I assume y'all are in?
So long as we get historically accurate ones, because those things took up your whole fucking hand.
I mean, I'm just gonna get a power drill with a battery because I feel like that's the same.
That sounds about right, yeah.
Just put a double on the end of it.
This play was already on our wish list for Miscreant, but then someone else.
Yeah, I remember watching it actually. I think in ye olden days, back when the weekend after Macbeth closed.
Yeah, at the bakery.
Yep.
Yeah. I think that was the last thing that I remember doing before everything went to
I mean,
Natalie, did you see it?
For
Yes,
reference.
I did. It was so good.
Was this before?
It was really good.
The one with the Hogwarts.
Sorry, there's a lot going on.
Puffs?
Puffs, yeah. Was that before or after Puffs? I can't even remember.
Before Puffs.
I think it was right around the time
before
of Puffs. Oh, was it before Puffs? Because Katie Medved was in the Vibrator play. Who did she play?
She was you. She was Mrs. Giving.
She was Sorry.
Yeah. And then Hugh.
Katie Medved was my Buckingham.
Butterfield or
and
something.
Richard III.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, I'm so proud. I'm a proud mom.
So good.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I love that we have a community
And
here.
all that was on the set was there was one chair and one settee in the living room, and she was crawling all over it the whole show.
Ooh.
It was so
it was a lot of fun.
Gorgeous.
Love it. All right. Well, y'all are fucking just the best human beings I know. And I am so glad to have had the opportunity to partake in this with all of you. So, I mean, not that I'm in charge here, but Doron, is there anything else that we need to add here?
I mean, just open for anybody else to say anything that they want. I don't think there's anything for Miscreant to add unless Erin or Tom has anything they want to say. I mean, thank you all for coming and being a part of it. We hope that you volunteer for our next show, which will be in 2 weeks. We're doing sort of bi-monthly readings, just to probably basically just for me. I'm dealing with a lot of shit, and everybody else in Miscreant is being very generous and wonderful and kind to me. And so yeah, we're doing bi-monthly.
Not that you're not going through shit, but here, I'm gonna go ahead and end it. So thanks everyone for coming.
Recording.
Wait.
Ghosts on my
fingernails. No. How do I? No, I need to stop it.
You have to hit stop recording. I got a manicure.
We'll
and I
have a poll up this week.